Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is part 1 of our story. If you like this What If story and want to see part 2, let me know in the comments below. Before we start, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video with your friends. Also, check the description for more great content and my playlist. This story was posted by 𝐒𝐵𝐷 on Wattpad. Now let's start. In a seemingly ordinary building, a family of 2 resided. A loving mother with long, silky green hair and her 4-year-old son, who had fluffy green hair and 4 freckles on each cheek arranged in a diamond shape. Today was a significant day for the young child, as he was at the age when children discover their quirks. The little boy eagerly jumped on his mother, calling out to her. She responded, telling him to get ready while she woke up. He quickly dashed to his room to grab his all-might toy, then hurried to the bathroom to brush his teeth and tame his wild hair. Afterward, he slipped on his shoes and ran to his mother, who was ready with the car keys. They made their way to the car and drove to the doctor's office. Upon arrival, they quickly ascended to the 6th floor and settled in the waiting room. While waiting, Izuku noticed another boy with raven hair and a shadowy presence beside him. He introduced himself, and the boy responded with his name, 𝐾𝐭𝐚𝐲. The 2 boys engaged in conversation until a nurse called them into the examination room. The doctor greeted them warmly and reassured Izuku that he would only take a small BLD sample to determine his quirk. As the doctor prepared for the test, Izuku bounced in his chair, filled with excitement. After about 20 minutes, the doctor returned with a smile, announcing that Izuku had a unique quirk, 10 tendrils capable of grasping objects and controlling technology. Izuku's joy was palpable as he realized he could become a hero. The doctor confirmed this, and they discussed his quirk, which he decided to name Techno-Whip. As they left, Izuku waved goodbye to the doctor. Meanwhile, the doctor made a call to a contact labeled as work. A man on the other end introduced himself as 𝐒𝐻𝐵, the president of 𝐻𝗵𝐻𝐵. The doctor informed him that he had found a suitable candidate for the Zeiram project. The man warned him of the consequences if he was mistaken, but the doctor assured him that he only needed a few men to capture the boy. The next day, Izuku was seen playing in an open field with another boy who had spiky hair and red eyes. The boy asked if Izuku had finally discovered his quirk, to which Izuku proudly confirmed. However, during their play, the ball was kicked too far, and Izuku volunteered to retrieve it, unaware of a man lurking behind a tree. As Izuku collected the ball, the man emerged and covered his mouth with a cloth. Despite his struggles, Izuku succumbed to drowsiness and fell asleep. The other boy noticed and attempted to chase after them, but 2 men appeared and restrained him before he could intervene. When the boy regained consciousness, he realized Izuku was gone and rushed home in tears. His mother, alarmed by his distress, picked him up and asked what had happened. He explained that men had taken Izuku away while they were playing. Meanwhile, in a remote facility, Izuku awoke strapped to a metal table surrounded by syringes and various instruments. A man in a doctor's outfit entered, explaining that they were hired by 𝐻𝗵𝐻𝐵 to experiment on him. He warned Izuku that the procedure might be painful and injected him with a syringe containing a strange, bubbling liquid. Izuku felt intense discomfort as he sensed his skin changing, becoming pitch black with a glossy sheen. The man ominously stated that this was just the beginning, hinting at more to come. For the following nights, Izuku's cries echoed through the facility, marking the start of years filled with experimentation. Over time, he transformed into something unrecognizable, a mere shadow of his former self. After 11 years of relentless procedures, Izuku was seen in an empty room, training against robotic dummies with his bare hands, a testament to his enduring spirit. He was entirely different from anyone else. Standing at about 8 feet tall, he wore large black boots and a long robe that resembled traditional Indian attire, vibrant red with a black neck area and fur on the shoulders. A scarf wrapped around his mouth concealed his features, while a visor was fused to his body. His long, sharp claws contrasted with his blackish-purple skin. On his head, he sported a cassock of the same color, adorned with a small kabuki face on the front. As he effortlessly punched through the robots, the scientists observed him closely. One scientist remarked that the individual they were selling was expected to be shipped out that very night. Another confirmed that preparations were underway for his departure later that day. Unbeknownst to the scientists, despite being behind soundproof, one-sided glass, Izuku was watching them intently, hearing every word. A twisted gleam appeared in his eyes when he caught wind of the phrase, "shipping him out." Hours later, as they discussed their plans, an explosion rocked the facility, followed by the blaring of alarms. A robotic voice announced the intrusion of heroes into the premises. The chief scientist shouted for everyone to quickly grab Zeiram and leave. The men rushed into the room, chaining Zeiram's hands and wrapping chains around his head and hat. They began to pull him along, believing they had control over him, unaware that Zeiram had his own plans. As they passed one of the computers, a light blue tendril emerged from Zeiram's hat, connecting to the machine. It accessed the mainframe and erased all data related to the Zeiram project before retracting back into the hat. The scientists then pushed Zeiram into the back of an armored truck, securing the chains to the bottom. They failed to notice the face on Zeiram's hat breaking into a smile. Meanwhile, the heroes were engaged in two operations. One team, consisting of All Might, 𝐒𝐮𝐻𝐬, ectoplasm, Best Jeanist, Gang Orca, and Midnight, attacked the facility where Zeiram had been experimented on. The second team, including Endeavor, Present Mike, Snipe, Hawks, Hound Dog, and Kamui Woods, targeted the headquarters of 𝗏𝗏𝗏 after Nizu uncovered their involvement in funding the secret lab. 𝗏𝗏𝗏, the president of 𝗏𝗏𝗏, was taken by surprise. He never anticipated that the heroes would discover his connection to the operations and invade his company. Before he could call for security, a branch ensnared him. Kamui Woods declared his arrest for experimentation on individuals and murder, reminding him of his right to remain silent as he pulled 𝗏𝗏𝗏 from the building and onto the ground. In the other facility, 𝐒𝐮𝐻𝐬 and Midnight faced challenges as they battled against robotic defenses. Fortunately, Gang Orca and All Might were able to break through the machines, but they had to be cautious of the armed robots. Ectoplasm expressed frustration over the relentless onslaught, while Best Jeanist encouraged the team to keep moving and focus on disabling the central computer to shut down the defenses. The group navigated the maze-like facility, dismantling any machines in their path until they finally reached the computer. Just as one of Ectoplasm's clones approached it, a blue energy field activated, causing the clone to vanish in an explosion. Midnight exclaimed in frustration over the force field, seeking a solution. 𝐒𝐮𝐻𝐬 instructed All Might and Gang Orca to tunnel underground, revealing that the field only extended above ground. They successfully entered the area beneath the force field and destroyed the computer, shutting down the robots. However, as they accessed the mainframe, they discovered that one project had been completely erased, leaving only an empty data folder. Meanwhile, in an armored car miles away from the facility, Zeiram decided it was time to escape. He effortlessly broke the chains binding him, tearing them off his head, hat, and legs. He glanced at the side of the vehicle, drew back his arm, and punched through the wall. A slender tendril extended from his hand, wrapping around the front right wheel and tearing it off. The driver panicked, exclaiming that he could no longer control the vehicle. Just as he finished speaking, the car flipped over and tumbled down a hill, crashing and causing an explosion. Emerging from the smoke and debris, Zeiram walked away unscathed, his hat displaying a devilish grin. 10 months after the heroes had raided 𝗏𝗏𝗏, a 23-year-old man named Hagano Kinzu, the leader of an underground organization, found himself fleeing for his life. As he sprinted, breathing heavily and filled with panic, he glanced back to see a towering figure clad in armor, a visor, a scarf, and a robe, with a casa featuring a face, holding a lifeless body with a twisted neck. In an instant, Zeiram appeared before him, striking him with the body he carried. The man fell, and Zeiram seized him by the throat, squeezing until the sound of a snap echoed. Afterward, he dragged the body to a hidden warehouse and dropped it in front of a waiting figure. The man acknowledged the kill, commenting on Zeiram's lethal reputation and handing him a suitcase filled with money. Thus, Zeiram had embraced the life of an assassin. After hours of walking, he arrived at his destination, a gravestone inscribed with the words, Here lies Izuku Midoriya, beloved by many. The towering figure crouched down, placing a handful of roses before the gravestone. Without uttering a single word, he simply stood up and walked away. On the other side of town, 𝐾𝐞𝐭𝐚𝐢𝐥𝐬 was training at 𝗂𝐴 Beach, preparing to master the quirk known as One for All and get ready for the UA entrance exams. His training involved clearing trash from the beach and then blasting it away. A very scrawny man with wild, long blonde hair watched him, occasionally coughing. The man encouraged 𝗂𝐴 to put more effort into his training. 𝗂𝐴, not one to hold back, retorted with a sharp comment, urging the man to be quiet. As they exchanged words, they remained unaware of a tall figure lurking nearby, a man whose face was almost entirely obscured. After observing them for a moment, he stepped into a swirling purple portal. Later that night, 𝗟𝗟𝐻𝐸, known as Aizawa, was on his patrol when he heard a piercing scream. He rushed over to find a tall, shrouded figure with a menacing presence. The figure had just plunged his hand into another man's chest, pulling out something vital. Aizawa quickly sprang into action, using his capture weapon to restrain the attacker while activating his quirk. The imposing figure turned to Aizawa, a crooked smile forming on his face. In an instant, he yanked Aizawa off the ground and delivered a powerful blow, sending him crashing into the pavement and leaving him unconscious. The figure looked down at Aizawa with a sense of disdain before tearing away the capture weapon and walking off, still holding the remains of his earlier victim. About 30 minutes later, the police arrived to find Aizawa lying in a large crater in the concrete. They quickly summoned paramedics, who transported him to the nearest hospital. Shortly after, Hisashi, known as Present Mike, rushed in, frantic with worry for his husband. He asked the doctor about Aizawa's condition, desperate to know he was okay. The doctor reassured him that Aizawa was fine, suffering only from a broken wrist, a few cracked ribs, and possibly a concussion. Hisashi felt a wave of relief wash over him, grateful that 𝗪𝗱 would survive. He couldn't imagine how he would cope if anything worse had happened. When Aizawa regained consciousness, he was greeted by a bright light and realized he was in a hospital room. Confused about how he had ended up there, he recalled the scream he had heard during his patrol. Just then, the doctor entered, informing him that his husband had been very worried. Moments later, Hisashi burst into the room, tears streaming down his face. He expressed his overwhelming relief at seeing Aizawa awake, wrapping him in a tight embrace. Aizawa winced at the contact, prompting Hisashi to apologize immediately. The doctor returned to the room, explaining that Aizawa had indeed sustained a concussion and should rest for a few days. Meanwhile, in an abandoned chemical plant, Zeiram sat in anticipation of his next assignment. He felt no purpose in life other than to eliminate others and profit from it. He had grand plans that required substantial funding, but the details remained a mystery. As the lights flickered off, only the sinister smile of his hat was visible, hinting at his next target. Zeiram navigated through dark alleyways, moving quietly despite his imposing size. He eventually discovered a hidden building that resembled a decrepit laboratory. Inside, he found an underground passage leading to a maze of corridors. He skillfully maneuvered through the twists and turns until he reached a wooden door. Upon entering, he encountered 3 men, one in a white robe and plague doctor mask, another resembling a living stuffed animal, and the last wearing a green hoodie, a plague doctor mask, white gloves, black hair, and gold-colored eyes. The man in the robe introduced himself as Kaichisaki, or Overhaul, and introduced his companions, Mimic and Chronostasis. Zeiram, speaking in a deep, raspy voice, inquired about the job. Overhaul explained that they wanted him to sabotage the League of Villains, as they had recently declined their offer of assistance. He encouraged Zeiram to do whatever necessary to ensure their mission failed. Zeiram nodded and asked about payment. Overhaul informed him he would receive a substantial sum if he succeeded. After hearing this, Zeiram stood up to leave, issuing a warning that any betrayal would result in dire consequences. Mimic questioned Overhaul's decision to let Zeiram leave after such a threat, but Overhaul remained unfazed. He acknowledged Zeiram's reputation as a top assassin, emphasizing that threats from him were not to be taken lightly. A few days later, Katsuki and the rest of his class prepared for school. Aizawa was about to arrive, as a student with wild yellow hair streaked with black remarked. Another student with 6 arms commented that Aizawa would likely be late again. Suddenly, Aizawa entered the classroom, commanding silence. He announced that the class would be visiting the unseen simulation joint, known as the USJ, and instructed everyone to wear either their hero outfits or gym clothes. He warned that anyone taking longer than 5 minutes to get ready would face expulsion. The students hurriedly rushed to prepare. On the bus, excitement filled the air as they chatted about various topics. Tsuyu brought up Bakugu's quirk, comparing it to All Might's. Bakugu vehemently rejected the comparison, declaring his intent to surpass All Might and become the #1 hero. Kirishima noted that while Bakugu had a flashy quirk, his own might not attract as much attention. Tsuyu added that Bakugu's personality might hinder his popularity. Bakugu reacted angrily to Tsuyu's comment, while Kaminari chimed in, suggesting that Bakugu's explosive nature was akin to a bomb ready to detonate. Meanwhile, Zeiram stealthily navigated through alleyways, determined to uncover the location of the USJ. Overheard a group of thugs discussing an impending attack and decided to extract information from them. He stealthily approached the nearest thug, swiftly incapacitating him. The remaining thugs were momentarily frozen in shock as they witnessed their comrade's fate. One of them regained composure and attempted to fight back, but Zeiram quickly subdued him with a sharp metal spike. Sensing that the lone female might pose a threat, he swiftly dealt with her as well. With only one thug left, Zeiram pinned him against the wall and demanded to know the location of the USJ, threatening dire consequences if he did not comply. "Please don't do it," the man pleaded. "Good, but I only said I wouldn't harm you severely." As he finished speaking, he swiftly dispatched the man, his weapon piercing through with a decisive motion. The students had finally arrived and stood face to face with the pro hero 13. 13 began to speak, emphasizing the importance of their situation. He explained that his powerful quirk, Black Hole, could absorb anything and reduce it to nothingness. Ochako acknowledged 13's past heroics, noting how he had used his quirk to save many lives. 13 reminded them that while their quirks could be used for good, they also had the potential to cause harm. He urged them to remain focused and aware of their powers, as even well-intentioned actions could lead to dangerous outcomes. Thanks to Aizawa's fitness tests, they understood their quirk's capabilities, and All Might's training had shown them the risks of using their powers against others. 13 concluded by stating that their lesson for the day would be to learn how to use their quirks to save lives, not to attack. As the students prepared to begin, a swirling black and purple vortex appeared, and figures emerged from it. Among them was a man covered in hands, with light blue hair, accompanied by a towering creature with a bird-like head and an unsettling appearance. The vortex expanded, revealing 2 golden eyes. Kirishima remarked on the presence of what he thought were fake villains, but Aizawa quickly corrected him, warning that they were indeed real threats. As the students looked on in shock, Aizawa instructed 13 to stay with them while he approached the villains. Suddenly, something crashed through the roof of the USJ, creating a large crater. As the dust settled, a massive figure emerged, wearing a cassock with a smiling face. Everyone stepped back, uncertain of the identity of this newcomer, who seemed to have appeared from nowhere. He assessed the situation, realizing that attacking the heroes was not his objective. Instead, he focused on the weak villains before him, swiftly incapacitating them before they could react. The remaining villains were left terrified, realizing they were not facing a hero. Aizawa recognized the figure as someone who had previously defeated him effortlessly, recalling that his quirk had no effect on this individual. Understanding the danger, Aizawa retreated, knowing he could not confront him. However, Bakugu, acting impulsively, charged forward and aimed an attack at the towering figure. Aizawa shouted a warning, but it was too late. Bakugu unleashed his explosion, only for the figure to catch him effortlessly by the wrist, lifting him off the ground. As the smoke cleared, the figure tossed Bakugu aside, stating that he was not the target and should stay out of the way. The figure then returned his attention to the villains, swiftly incapacitating several more in mere moments. Though a teleportation user managed to reach the heroes, the figure remained unfazed. Shigaraki was taken aback by the unexpected turn of events. First, All Might had not appeared, and now this formidable presence had entered the fray. However, he was confident in his own strength, commanding the Nomu to attack. "Nomu, eliminate this fool," he ordered. The Nomu charged at the figure, landing a punch that seemed to have no effect. Shigaraki laughed, believing victory was assured. But as the smoke cleared, it became evident that the figure was unharmed. In a swift motion, he retaliated, striking the Nomu with a force that left a significant mark. The Nomu began to regenerate, prompting Shigaraki to boast about its abilities. Yet, the figure demonstrated his own power, swiftly overpowering the Nomu and dismantling it piece by piece, showing no mercy. He continued until he grew bored, ultimately finishing the encounter with a decisive blow. He pinned a weapon into each limb, securing his opponent to the floor, then approached the head and stomped down with such force that it shattered. The Nomu ceased all movement, becoming a mere shell. Shigaraki trembled with rage, scratching at his neck in frustration. He thought to himself that this was not just any secret boss. This was the ultimate challenge, and he felt unprepared. 𝐾𝐮𝐲 materialized beside him and informed Shigaraki that one of the students had escaped and that the heroes would arrive soon. With no other options, Shigaraki instructed 𝐾𝐮𝐲 to open a portal for their escape. However, before they could leave, a large needle-like weapon pierced his arm, causing him to cry out in pain. As he attempted to reach the portal, bullets struck his other limbs, signaling the arrival of the heroes. 𝐾𝐮𝐲 enveloped Shigaraki in a protective shroud and teleported them both away. Once the heroes arrived, they assessed the situation and turned their attention to Zeiram. Snipe began firing at him, but Zeiram absorbed the impacts, eventually collapsing to the ground. Ectoplasm and Present Mic launched their attacks, but he disregarded the noise and dismantled Ectoplasm's duplicates with ease. Before the other heroes could engage him, he leaped back through a hole in the ceiling and vanished. Back at his base, Zeiram contacted 𝗟𝗏 to inform him that the deal was complete. 𝗟𝗏 congratulated him and transferred the payment. Zeiram smiled, recognizing the potential of a valuable ally in the future. Meanwhile, at UA, the heroes were in disarray, trying to comprehend the identity of the mysterious figure who had defeated something even All Might might struggle against. Aizawa noted that he recognized the man as the same individual who had given him a concussion months prior. After hearing about the chaos caused by this enigmatic figure, Nizu decided to investigate further and called a meeting to brief the staff. Nizu shared his findings, stating that their mystery man was likely an assassin. He explained that the individual had shown no interest in attacking anyone who wasn't on his target list. Further research revealed that he called himself Zeiram and had quickly risen to become the world's top assassin within just a year. Nizu also discovered that a file related to him had been erased from the computers following the 𝐻𝗏𝗄 raid, leaving only the name, Project Zeiram. Vlad King exclaimed in disbelief, suggesting that Zeiram could have been an experiment that escaped. Nizu confirmed this suspicion, emphasizing the need for caution, as they had no idea how many quirks he might possess. He then dismissed the meeting. A few weeks earlier, right after the USJ incident, a portal opened in a quaint bar, and Shigaraki emerged, followed closely by 𝐾𝐮𝐲. Shigaraki glanced up at an old television. Audio only appeared on the screen, expressing frustration. A voice lamented that a random individual had shown up, defeated most of the men, and handled Nomu effortlessly. They had expected All Might to be their primary concern. Another voice reassured Tamura Shigaraki that it wasn't the end. They encouraged him to regroup and prepare for the next encounter, assuring him that the heroes would learn to fear him. However, there was a need to eliminate someone imprisoned in Tartarus first. 𝐾𝐮𝐲 was instructed to contact Jiren and find someone capable of infiltrating and dealing with that individual. 𝐾𝐮𝐲 acknowledged the command. In a different scene, Zeiram walked alongside a man dressed unusually who was smoking. He guided him to the bar mentioned earlier. Upon entering, Shigaraki recognized the man immediately and charged at him, but 𝐾𝐮𝐲 intervened with a portal before he could act. Shigaraki expressed his outrage, pointing out that the man had attacked them. The voice from the screen questioned Zeiram about bringing someone who had previously tried to harm Shigaraki's student. Zeiram explained that he had found the best assassin in the world as requested and left the two to discuss matters. Zeiram inquired about the job. The voice explained that they needed him to break into 𝗟𝗏𝗧 and eliminate a man who had failed to uphold his end of a deal. The target was named 𝗟𝗏𝗸. Upon hearing the name, Zeiram realized who he was meant to confront, feeling a surge of satisfaction at the thought of avenging himself while being compensated for it. Unbeknownst to the villains, a certain red-winged hero had overheard their conversation. Torn between loyalties, he decided to inform the heroes about the discussion but withheld the location of the villain's base. Meanwhile, Nizu, All Might, and Aizawa stood before 𝗟𝗏𝗧. The guards permitted their entry and escorted them to 𝗟𝗏𝗸's cell. 𝗟𝗏𝗸 questioned their purpose. Nizu stated they sought information about the Zeiram project. When asked why he should cooperate, Aizawa revealed that the creation they spoke of had been hired to kill him. 𝗟𝗏𝗸's demeanor shifted from arrogance to fear. He confessed that there was no way to stop the assassin, who had been designed to defeat even All Might and Endeavor working together. He admitted to knowing little beyond the name and intended purpose of the creation. All Might pressed for any weaknesses, but 𝗟𝗏𝗸 insisted that the being was an unstoppable force, a relentless entity. He urged them to give up and let him face his fate. All Might, determined, declared that they could not abandon their mission as heroes. Nizu suggested speaking with the warden about increasing security and possibly involving pro-heroes. With that, they departed, and Nizu made some important calls. Days later, Zeiram approached the imposing metal door of 𝗟𝗏𝗧. He effortlessly leaped over it and, once inside, summoned tendrils from his hat. These tendrils disabled the cameras and security systems, allowing him to proceed to 𝗟𝗏𝗸's cell. However, as he reached the floor, bullets began to rain down on him. They struck him but fell harmlessly to the ground, failing to faze him. He turned to the guards, who trembled in fear at the sight of him. He seized one of the guards and swiftly dispatched him, examining the man's weapon before integrating it into his right hand, transforming it into a massive gun. With a powerful blast, he took down the remaining guards, leaving only remnants behind. Continuing down the corridor, he spotted the pro-heroes 𝗟𝗏𝗏 and 𝐵𝗏𝗏. 𝗟𝗏𝗏 commanded him to stop, unleashing a forceful blast of air, but it merely nudged Zeiram slightly. Undeterred, he advanced slowly toward them. 𝐵𝗏𝗏 launched a torrent of water, but it had no effect. Zeiram continued his approach, unfazed by their efforts, until he seized both heroes by the neck. He explained that he had no reason to fear them, which was why he felt no need to rush. With that, he struck, causing them to struggle for breath. Afterward, he punched through the glass wall of 𝗟𝗏𝗸's cell, declaring his intent to end 𝗟𝗏𝗸's life. 𝗟𝗏𝗸, resigned, told him to proceed. Zeiram clarified that he intended to make the death slow and agonizing. He pinned 𝗟𝗏𝗸's limbs to the wall with one of his weapons, then began to strike him repeatedly, leaving him battered and broken. In a final act of cruelty, he inflicted a severe wound, leaving 𝗟𝗏𝗸 in a state of despair while he laughed as he departed into the night. Zeiram moved across rooftops under the cover of darkness, searching for his next target, a lesser-known hero named 𝗏𝗏𝗏. After hours of searching, he located the hero's residence. Silently, he slipped inside and found the hero's bedroom. Without making a sound, he approached and plunged a glimmering object into the man's heart. Once the deed was done, he left to collect his payment from the League of Villains. They had recognized his potential and began hiring him to eliminate threats to their organization. Upon returning to their base, Zeiram found it in disarray, with Shigaraki looking furious and nursing a wound on his wrist. As Zeiram entered, a voice from a screen addressed him, requesting another assassination. He inquired about the target, learning it was the hero killer, 𝗟𝗏𝗏, who had recently attacked Tamura. Zeiram accepted the task, ensuring he would be compensated, and stepped through the portal provided by Kurojirai. Emerging in an abandoned alleyway, he sensed 5 life forms nearby. Investigating, he discovered a group of UA students. He initially intended to ignore them, but then spotted 𝗟𝗏𝗏 among them, engaged in battle. As he approached, the hero killer noticed him and warned him to leave. The students, upon seeing Zeiram, felt a wave of panic. Zeiram, however, continued towards 𝐼𝐶, who leaped and attempted to strike him. To 𝐶's surprise, his weapon shattered upon contact, and Zeiram remained unharmed. Before 𝐶 could react, Zeiram seized him, stating that while he was sent to kill him, he found 𝐶 intriguing and would grant him a swift end. With a swift transformation, Zeiram shot a bullet through 𝐶's head, declaring his mission complete. Suddenly his lower half was encased in ice. He glanced at Todoroki, then effortlessly broke free. Bakugo charged at him, unleashing an explosion, but Zeiram caught him by the wrist and hurled him toward Todoroki. Iida attempted to attack, but Zeiram brushed off the blows and retaliated with a powerful strike that sent Iida crashing into a building. With that, Zeiram leaped away before they could regroup. After 𝐶's demise, news of his life and ideals spread rapidly throughout Japan, drawing attention to the League of Villains. As Zeiram traversed the rooftops once more, he sensed a shift in temperature nearby. Following it, he discovered a man with wild black hair and scarred skin cornered by thugs, who were being incinerated by blue flames. Zeiram observed until one thug managed to stab the man in the leg. As the thug prepared to deliver a final blow, Zeiram intervened, striking the thug's head against the concrete with devastating force. Approaching the fallen warrior, Zeiram expressed admiration for his abilities. The man, surprised, asked if Zeiram intended to kill him. Zeiram replied that he saw great potential in him as an assassin but noted a lack of skill. He offered to take him on as an apprentice, extending his hand. The man accepted, introducing himself as 𝗂𝐷𝐵 and expressing gratitude for the opportunity, revealing that he had long admired Zeiram. The man, now known as 𝗂𝐵𝐵, felt a push from his companion. After assisting him to his feet, they both ventured into the night, their laughter echoing through the alley where remnants of destruction lingered. It had been 2 months since Zeiram took 𝗂𝐵𝐵 under his wing, and during that time, 𝗂𝐵𝐵's combat skills had improved significantly. He had learned to anticipate opponents' moves and endure longer in physical confrontations. Zeiram was relentless in his training, emphasizing the importance of precision and the dangers of sparring. 𝗂𝐵𝐵 understood that his mentor would not hesitate to push him to his limits, which only fueled his determination to excel. After 2 months of rigorous training, Zeiram deemed 𝗂𝐵𝐵 ready for his first mission. He informed 𝗂𝐵𝐵 that he needed to infiltrate the League of Villains and gather intelligence about them. 𝗂𝐵𝐵 questioned the necessity of this task, noting that Zeiram often worked with them. Zeiram clarified that past alliances did not guarantee loyalty and that they could turn against him if it suited their interests. 𝗂𝐵𝐵 accepted the challenge, vowing not to disappoint his mentor. Determined to succeed, 𝗂𝐵𝐵 sought out an information broker named Zeiram, who was known for his extensive knowledge and owed a debt to Zeiram. After several days of searching, 𝗂𝐵𝐵 located Zeiram in a casino. Approaching the counter, he introduced himself and expressed his interest in joining the group associated with 𝐶. Zeiram's interest piqued at the mention of 𝐶, and he agreed to help 𝗂𝐵𝐵, inviting him to meet at a specific location in 2 days. On the appointed day, 𝗂𝐵𝐵 arrived at the meeting spot, where he found Zeiram and a peculiar girl with blonde hair and fangs. She excitedly approached him, expressing a longing to drink his blood. Despite feeling uneasy, 𝗂𝐵𝐵 maintained a composed demeanor. Zeiram then led them to an abandoned warehouse, which surprisingly resembled a stylish bar inside, complete with plush seating and an old television displaying audio only. Inside, 𝗂𝐵𝐵 encountered 2 other individuals, Kurohige and Tamura, the latter of whom scrutinized 𝗂𝐵𝐵 and Toga. Tamura expressed his disapproval, but Kurohige argued that their skills could be beneficial to their plans. Ultimately, Tamura relented, welcoming them to the League of Villains and assigning them to the Vanguard Action Squad, the elite group within the organization. 𝗂𝐵𝐵 felt a sense of triumph at how easily he had gained entry. After conversing with Toga, 𝗂𝐵𝐵 returned to the base he shared with Zeiram. Upon arrival, he discovered that Zeiram was absent, likely on a mission. Just then, Zeiram was seen leaping across rooftops in pursuit of a villain known as 𝐒𝐮𝐬. The hybrid was attempting to escape, but Zeiram was relentless. After a brief chase, Zeiram seized 𝐼𝐼𝐬𝐲's tail and hurled him into a building, leaving him motionless in the alley below. As Zeiram approached the fallen villain, 𝐼𝐼𝐬𝐲 transformed, unleashing a powerful laser that obliterated everything within a 5-block radius. Zeiram, unfazed and unscathed, confronted 𝐼𝐼𝐬𝐲 directly, swiftly dispatching him with a precise strike. After collecting his reward, Zeiram returned home to find 𝗂𝐵 waiting for him. 𝗂𝐵 reported that his mission had been successful, although he acknowledged that having Zeiram's insights would have made it easier. However, he understood that this was part of his training and was determined to prove himself. 𝗂𝐵 entered the room, ready to take on his mission. Zeiram, with a grin on his hat, cackled into the chilly night air as 𝗂𝐵 settled onto a stool in the League of Villains bar, sipping a drink while waiting for Shigaraki's arrival. When Shigaraki finally walked in, he scanned the room to ensure everyone was present before outlining the plan. The UA students were on a camping trip, and the villains intended to launch a surprise attack on their 3rd day. Shigaraki specified that he wanted 𝐾𝐶𝐭𝐻 captured. 𝗂𝐵 interjected, suggesting they also capture 𝐒𝐮𝐻𝐽, citing a debt owed to a dangerous individual. Shigaraki reluctantly agreed, warning them not to mess it up. Meanwhile, 𝗏𝐻𝐽 and his classmates were enjoying dinner in their cabin after a long day of training. They were about to participate in a test of courage, where the 1B students would attempt to scare the 1A students. As the scaring began, the villains prepared to strike from the shadows of the forest. Impatience bubbled over as a cloaked figure urged the others to move. Another villain, dressed in a yellow tailcoat and top hat, advised patience. However, 𝗂𝐵, with a wild grin, declared it was time to attack and lit the forest ablaze. In the mountains, a young child wandered, unaware of the danger lurking nearby. The cloaked villain approached, suggesting a costume change, but before he could reach the child, an explosion erupted nearby. 𝗏𝐻𝐽 soared in, determined to protect the kid. The villain taunted 𝗏𝐻𝐽, but 𝗏𝐻𝐽 retaliated with another explosion. The villain, covered in muscle tissue, retaliated, sending 𝗏𝐻𝐽 crashing into a cliffside. They exchanged blows, each sustaining injuries, but 𝗏𝐻𝐽 was resolute in his defense of the child. Despite the villain's threats, 𝗏𝐻𝐽 declared his promise to protect children, fueled by the memory of a lost friend. With a powerful strike, he sent the villain crashing into a wall, knocking him out cold. Without pausing to catch his breath, 𝗏𝐻𝐽 dashed off to find his classmates, only to be momentarily blinded by a flash of light. Elsewhere, Todoroki and 𝗪𝐻𝐻 had successfully subdued their opponent, Moonfish, by using mind control to turn him against Mustard. Meanwhile, Uraraka and Azui struggled against Toga, who was intent on making them her new friends in a rather sinister way. Toga pinned Azui to a tree, but before she could inflict further harm, she was interrupted by a shadowy figure. As Toga fled, Tokoyami, Shoji, 𝗪𝐻𝐻, and Todoroki rushed to help Uraraka and Azui. They quickly realized Tokoyami was missing. Suddenly, a villain in a fishtail suit and top hat appeared, revealing 2 blue marbles that contained images of Tokoyami and 𝗏𝐻𝐽. He pocketed them and attempted to escape, but Todoroki launched an ice attack, which the villain narrowly avoided. 𝗪𝐻𝐻 tried to use his powers, but the villain remained unfazed. Azui then wrapped her tongue around his leg, while Uraraka, along with 𝗪𝐻𝐻 and Shoji, floated above him before dropping down. They landed directly in front of 𝗂𝐵, Toga, and another villain dressed in black and white. 2 more villains, one resembling Stain and the other in a vacation shirt and sunglasses, slipped away through portals. The urgency of the situation heightened as they realized the identities of the captured students. Who were the 2 personalities of the villain in the white and black suit shouted. 𝗂𝐵 urged 𝐼𝐼𝐻𝐽 to get up and move as he unleashed flames toward the students. They narrowly evaded the attack, and Todoroki retaliated by launching glaciers of ice at the villain. The criminal effortlessly dodged and sliced through the ice with a sharp metal tape measure. 𝗂𝐵 called out for Toga and twice to leave, stating that he and 𝐼𝐻𝐽 would follow. They nodded and jumped into a portal. 𝗂𝐵 continued to shoot fire at the students, preventing them from getting close. Just as 𝗏𝐻𝐽 was about to reach 𝗂𝐵, Shoji struck him with enough force to make him drop the marbles he was holding, which Shoji quickly caught. Shoji exclaimed that he had them. 𝐾𝐮𝐲 opened another portal behind 𝐼𝐷 and 𝐼𝐴. 𝐼𝐷 stepped inside while 𝐼𝐴 lingered at the entrance, chuckling lightly. He declared it was time to finish the show as he snapped his fingers, causing the marbles Shoji had caught to transform into shards of Todoroki's ice. The students gasped in shock as they turned to see the villain removing his mask. 𝐼𝐴 remarked that when someone reveals something, it often means they have something else to conceal. He displayed the marbles on the tip of his tongue before putting his mask back on and leaning back, beginning to fade into the portal. Just before he could disappear completely, a laser shot at him from 𝐼𝐴, who was hiding in the bushes. At the last moment, the imposing figure known as Zeiram landed in the path of the laser, deflecting it back toward 𝐼𝐴. It narrowly missed him, but before he could react, Zeiram struck him with a powerful blow, incapacitating him. Zeiram then entered the portal after 𝐼𝐴 had fully passed through. The students were left heartbroken as one of their own had fallen, and two had been captured. Upon emerging from the portal, Shigaraki was surprised to see Zeiram. Zeiram explained that he was there to collect a debt that Shigaraki had arranged. It dawned on Shigaraki that the debt 𝐷𝐵 owed was to Zeiram. He instructed 𝐼𝐴 to release the captured individuals. After 𝐼𝐴 snapped his fingers, causing them to revert to their normal states, Zeiram picked up Tokoyami and took him to one of the rooms in the base. Meanwhile, Bakugo remained chained. When Tokoyami regained consciousness, he looked around and noticed he was in a nearly pitch-black room. To his surprise, he was not restrained at all. He heard footsteps and turned to see the monstrous figure that had defeated many villains at the 𝐭. He backed away in fear until he hit a wall. Zeiram reassured him that he meant no harm and simply wanted him to join. Tokoyami questioned why he would do such a thing. Zeiram prompted him to consider his past treatment and whether he had any true friends at school. Tokoyami hesitated, admitting he had only one real friend. The image of the green-haired boy, Izuku Midoriya, flashed in his mind. Zeiram acknowledged this connection, addressing Tokoyami by his nickname. Tokoyami stuttered in disbelief, realizing the beast before him was his missing friend. Zeiram continued, pointing out the scarcity of true mutant-type heroes and suggesting that they could work together to change that. He extended his hand, inviting Tokoyami to join him. Tokoyami smirked and accepted the offer, agreeing to join. Zeiram then explained that he needed Tokoyami to infiltrate 𝐼𝐴. However, he warned that he would have to knock him out first. With that, Zeiram delivered a swift blow that rendered Tokoyami unconscious but caused no serious harm. He then chained him up and placed him beside Bakugo, expressing his trust in the group. Shigaraki mentioned that his 𝐵𝐵 wanted to meet Zeiram in person as 𝐾𝐮𝐲 opened a portal. Zeiram stepped through, finding himself in a lab where a man sat in a chair, connected to various cords and lacking facial features except for a mouth. The man introduced himself as 𝐿 and invited Zeiram to come closer. As Zeiram approached, 𝐿 suddenly stood and seized him by the face, declaring that all of Zeiram's powers would now belong to him. However, he quickly realized that nothing was happening. He felt no power. Before he could react further, the face on Zeiram's had elongated, revealing a peach-colored, pulsating neck. The mouth opened, revealing sharp teeth that bit into 𝐿's neck, causing him to cough and gasp. As 𝐿 struggled, Zeiram seized one of his weapons and swiftly ended the confrontation. Zeiram's had erupted in laughter as he stood over the defeated 𝐿. The League of Villains was currently interrogating Bakugo, attempting to persuade him to join their ranks. Shigaraki argued that people viewed Bakugo as a loose cannon and a monster, suggesting that he should embrace that identity and join them. Bakugo vehemently rejected the idea, declaring his ambition to become the #1 hero, insisting that nothing would deter him from that goal. Shigaraki frowned in frustration and began scratching his neck. He signaled to 𝐾𝐮𝐲 to warp Bakugo and Tokoyami away, but before they could act, a knock echoed through the room. A voice announced a pizza delivery, prompting the villains to exchange puzzled glances. Suddenly, All Might burst through the wall, declaring that the villains should stop. As Spinner and Twice prepared to attack, Roots suddenly ensnared all the villains, revealing the hero Kamui Woods. He warned them against resisting. Just as 𝐷𝐵 summoned flames from his hands, Another hero swooped in and incapacitated him with a swift kick to the back of the head. 𝐼𝐼𝐬, an experienced hero, informed the villains that the police had worked tirelessly to uncover their identities, emphasizing that they should not have underestimated their efforts. All Might expressed his apologies to Bakugo and Tokoyami for the delay, praising their resilience. In a fit of anger, Shigaraki commanded 𝐼𝐻𝐬 to teleport the Nomu, but 𝐼𝐻𝐬 hesitated, only to be struck and rendered unconscious by 𝐻𝐻𝐸, who assured everyone that the villain would be out for a while. All Might demanded to know the whereabouts of Shigaraki's 𝐒𝐻𝐬. Shigaraki lashed out, blaming All Might for the state of society and expressing his hatred for the hero. Suddenly, a shockwave rippled through the area as a figure emerged from a cloud of dust, who ominously declared his intent. Meanwhile, 5 minutes earlier, at a warehouse in Kamino, 𝐿ady had just kicked down a wall, joined by Tiger, Gang Orca, and Best Jeanist as they subdued the Nomu within. 𝐿ady complained about the boredom of the mission, questioning why they hadn't let the police handle it. Gang Orca reminded her of their duty to contain the creatures. As they conversed, a severed head rolled into view, revealing it to be that of Ragdoll, Tiger's missing partner. A deep voice explained that she had lost her quirk and would have been a liability, so he had disposed of her. Before the heroes could react, a shockwave knocked Best Jeanist and Tiger aside. Zeiram targeted Gang Orca, using his strength to trip 𝐿ady and strike Gang Orca in the stomach. Fortunately, Gang Orca managed to block the blow. Best Jeanist quickly prepared his quirk, attempting to wrap Zeiram in fabric, but it failed. Zeiram swiftly closed the distance, grabbing Jeanist's wrist and delivering a series of punches that left him reeling. With a powerful strike, Zeiram created a shockwave that shattered the ground, leaving Jeanist in a daze. He declared that, out of mercy, he would spare the others before leaping into the air. Back in the present, the police aimed their weapons at Zeiram, who dismissed the threat. As the officers lowered their guns, 𝐿𝐴 launched an attack, only for Zeiram to catch him and throw him aside. 𝐻𝐻𝐸 then struck, but Zeiram countered, and All Might joined the fray. A fierce battle ensued, with Zeiram blocking attacks and retaliating with brutal efficiency. Despite their combined efforts, Zeiram proved to be a formidable opponent. He stood tall after taking a hit from All Might, and with a powerful punch, he created a devastating hole in the wall, shocking everyone watching. Zeiram then swiftly incapacitated Gran Torino and 𝐻𝐻𝐸, rendering them unable to fight. He dismantled Kamui Wood's roots and knocked the hero out as well. Turning to 𝐼𝐻𝐻𝐸, Zeiram commanded him to transform everyone into marbles. After 𝐼𝐻𝐻𝐸 complied, Zeiram collected the League of Villains in their containers and vanished into the night. In a towering building owned by a large corporation, gunfire erupted on the 15th floor. A guard fired at an unseen threat when a massive black tendril suddenly pierced through him. The figure responsible for this was clad in a peculiar cone-shaped helmet, featuring a pointed end where the mouth would be, and slanted lines on either side for vision. Beneath a long black robe that trailed on the ground, a bulletproof vest and combat boots were concealed. The mysterious figure strode down the hallway as 2 more guards emerged, aiming their weapons at him. Without a word, the figure simply gazed at them, and then 2 enormous black wings unfurled from his back, slamming the guards against the wall with tremendous force, ending their lives in an instant. The villain continued his path down the corridor and ascended to the next floor. Upon arrival, he shattered the lights and blocked the windows, plunging the area into darkness. One of the men on this floor shouted in frustration, searching for the intruder. As the soldiers scanned their surroundings, the villain descended from the ceiling behind one of them, unfurling his cloak and wrapping it around the soldier. A muffled sound escaped the man as the villain tightened his grip, swiftly ending his life. The remaining guards quickly turned, but before they could react, the villain's cloak opened, and a flurry of dark spikes shot out, eliminating them all. The villain continued his relentless assault, moving from floor to floor, dispatching guards until he reached the final level. There, numerous individuals aimed their weapons at him, but he simply enveloped them with his wings, squeezing until they were overwhelmed. Afterward, he burst through the door to the main office, where he confronted the company owner, swiftly closing the distance and seizing him by the head. The owner, bewildered, demanded to know how the intruder had entered and the fate of his men. The villain coldly replied that he had eliminated all of them and was now there to finish the job. In a swift motion, he drove the beak of his mask into the man's neck, penetrating deeply until he twisted his head, ending his life. Once finished, the villain painted the yin portion of the yin and yang symbol in blood before walking away. Later, the villain arrived at a dilapidated location, where he came face to face with Zeiram. Zeiram commended him for his work, and the villain removed his helmet, revealing himself to be the bird boy everyone knew and admired. He credited his success to Zeiram's teachings. Meanwhile, at UA, Nizu, Aizawa, and ectoplasm gathered in Nizu's office. Aizawa inquired about the purpose of their meeting, to which Nizu explained that a new assassin was on the loose. He expressed concern, noting that they only knew two things about this individual, with the latter being particularly alarming. Ectoplasm asked for clarification, and Nizu revealed that the assassin's name was Mikaboshi, the name of the god of darkness and stars. The second troubling detail was that the bodies of his victims had been found alongside those associated with Zeiram, indicating a connection between them. The same place as Mikaboshi, which could only be accomplished by that man. When they learned that this new assassin was collaborating with the individual who had defeated both All for One and All Might, fear gripped them. A few days prior, Zeiram had been with the League of Villains to ensure their safety. Shigaraki confronted Zeiram, demanding to know why the news reported that he had killed their MSTR. As Shigaraki glared at him, it seemed he was on the verge of violence. Zeiram calmly responded, questioning whether Shigaraki truly believed the heroes would not lie about someone's death to cover their own failures. This caused Shigaraki to pause and reconsider. Zeiram explained that during a conversation with their MSTR, they had not noticed the heroes entering, and Best Jeanist had used his quirk to incapacitate their MSTR. To ease Shigaraki's anger, Zeiram added that he had avenged his death by eliminating the one responsible. Satisfied with this explanation, Shigaraki watched as Zeiram gestured to 𝗂𝐷𝐵, signaling for a private conversation. 𝗂𝐵𝐵 complied, and they moved to another room. Zeiram informed 𝗂𝐵𝐵 that Tokoyami had joined them, and they would both be training him to prepare for an upcoming challenge. Returning to the present, Zeiram quietly navigated the alleys, searching for his next target. Following the death of All Might, his reputation had soared, and he was now one of the most feared assassins in the world. As he stealthily moved, he spotted the hero, 𝐒𝐮𝐧𝐼𝐻. Zeiram made his presence known by leaping behind him. 𝐒𝐮𝐧𝐼𝐻 turned, trembling in fear, yet he charged at the assassin. His hair hardened as he advanced, but Zeiram swiftly grabbed him by the head and slammed him against the wall. As 𝐒𝐮𝐧𝐼𝐻 struggled to rise, Mikaboshi descended and swiftly dispatched him. Zeiram acknowledged Mikaboshi's arrival and suggested they collect their payment before he returned home to avoid suspicion. They departed into the shadows, leaving behind the fallen hero. Zeiram then observed the gathering of heroes and police outside what was believed to be the headquarters of the 𝗓𝗍 Hasaikai. He watched as the formidable villain Rikia Katsukame faced off against pro-hero Ryukyu and trainees 𝗟𝗏𝐷 and 𝗟𝗏𝐷. Zeiram studied their quirks, waiting for the right moment to act. As he slipped into the compound unnoticed, he found it amusing how oblivious they were to his presence. However, he focused on his mission. As he traversed the corridors, he felt the ground shift beneath him. Mimic confronted him, offering to lead him to the other heroes. Zeiram found himself in a large, empty room, where he spotted pro-hero Fat Gum and trainee Red Riot, who was trapped in a crater. Noticing Kendo 𝗏𝗏 preparing to strike Fat Gum, Zeiram intervened. He blocked 𝗏𝗏's punch and redirected his attention to 𝗏𝗏𝐻, delivering a powerful blow that incapacitated him. 𝗏𝗏, undeterred, challenged Zeiram, who warned him against fighting. Fat Gum understood the danger and chose to stay out of the conflict. 𝗏𝗏 charged at Zeiram, throwing a series of punches that had no effect. Zeiram countered with a hook that sent 𝗏𝗏 off balance. Seizing the opportunity, he delivered an uppercut followed by a kick to 𝗏𝗏's stomach. 𝗏𝗏, with dwindling energy, attempted to strike again, but Zeiram caught his hand and retaliated with a powerful punch. After a series of blows, 𝗏𝗏 found himself on the ground, bloodied and defeated. As he looked up at Zeiram, he acknowledged the strength of his opponent. Zeiram, recognizing the end was near, delivered a final, decisive blow. Afterward, he addressed the two heroes, suggesting they seek medical assistance in the direction he indicated before continuing on his path. As he walked, he heard commotion and the sound of shifting ground. In another room, he witnessed trainee 𝐒𝐻𝐬 battling the villain 𝗟𝗏, who was manipulating the ground into spikes. 𝐒𝐻𝐬 skillfully evaded the spikes and struck 𝗟𝗏, causing him to drop a container of quirk erasing bullets. One bullet rolled toward 𝗟𝗏's minion, 𝗪𝐻𝐿, who hesitated, realizing he could not hit 𝐒𝐻𝐬 directly. He aimed at a girl behind 𝐒𝐻𝐬, intending to use her as leverage. As the bullet was fired, 𝐒𝐻𝐬 instinctively dove in front of her, ready to protect her at all costs. The heroes 𝐒𝐮𝐩𝐩𝐸, 𝗟𝗏𝐻𝐿, and the hero trainee Dynamite rushed in to find 𝐒𝐻𝐬 holding a little girl. 𝗟𝗏𝐻𝐿 shouted in concern, asking what had happened. 𝐒𝐻𝐬 pointed in a direction, revealing Zeiram. To understand the situation, they replayed the events. A bullet flew toward 𝐒𝐻𝐬, and with a loud bang, Zeiram zoomed in front of him, catching the bullet before anyone could react. He then swiftly moved behind 𝗟𝗏. Startled, 𝗟𝗏 turned to see Zeiram, who backhanded him, sending him crashing into a wall, unconscious. At that moment, the heroes arrived. Aizawa shouted for Zeiram to stop, glaring at him. Consumed by rage upon seeing the assassin who had killed his mentor, 𝗟𝗏𝐻𝐿 attacked, but Zeiram effortlessly caught his hand. 𝗏𝐻𝐿 activated his quirk, only to be taken aback when he realized Zeiram didn't appear in his vision of the future. Zeiram explained that he moved faster than the eye could see and then threw 𝗏𝐻𝐿 toward Aizawa. Afterward, Zeiram picked up 𝗏𝐻𝐻𝐿 and leaped through the roof, breaking it in the process. Following the chaos of the invasion, the heroes imprisoned the villains and began transporting them to Tartarus. However, while driving, they noticed a truck in front of them with Tamura Shigaraki aboard. The back of the truck opened to reveal 𝗟𝗶𝗸, who unleashed flames at them. The hero's snatch transformed his body into sand to block the attack. The heroes shouted about the League of Villains. 𝗟𝗶𝗸 jumped out of the vehicle, firing more flames, and while the hero was distracted, 𝗏𝐻𝐿 turned him into a marble. The villains quickly eliminated the drivers and pulled 𝗟𝗏 from the truck, still restrained. Shigaraki picked up 2 containers filled with special drag bullets, asking which one was the finished product. 𝗟𝗏 claimed them as his own. Shigaraki expressed his disdain for 𝗟𝗏 but revealed he had something else in mind. As Shigaraki finished speaking, 𝗏𝐻𝐿 turned one of 𝗟𝗏's arms into a marble while Shigaraki decayed and severed his other arm. Shigaraki taunted 𝗟𝗏, declaring him helpless and sidelined as his dreams faded away. 𝗟𝗏 yelled in despair as Shigaraki and the others departed. Meanwhile, Zeiram observed as Minamoto regained consciousness and looked at him. Zeiram expressed a longing for Minamoto to join him. Minamoto refused, insisting on his loyalty to 𝗟𝗏. Zeiram challenged that loyalty, pointing out that 𝗟𝗏 had planned to leave him behind and had never utilized his quirk. Realizing the truth in Zeiram's words, Minamoto felt foolish for believing 𝗟𝗏 cared. Zeiram offered Minamoto a place on his team, emphasizing that he valued him. Minamoto agreed, and they walked away, laughing together. In Fukuoka, at the agency of the #2 hero Hawks, he and 𝗟𝗏𝐿 discussed plans to investigate a potential Nomu. 𝗟𝗏𝐿 questioned Hawks about pursuing what might only be a rumor. Hawks insisted that it could be true, so they should check it out. Just as Hawks finished speaking, something flew toward them at incredible speed, demolishing the wall of their room. A giant humanoid creature, about the size of Zeiram, entered. It had a thin body and wore only shorts and a torn hood. The creature inquired about the strongest among them. 𝗟𝗏𝐿 responded by launching a massive fireball at the creature, sending it flying out of the building. As it soared through the air, jet blasts erupted from its back, allowing it to stay airborne. Despite having its chest burned and one hand injured, the creature quickly regenerated. It then enlarged its left hand, seized 𝗟𝗏𝐿, and hurled him across the building. In his thoughts, 𝐿𝐸 noted the 𝐿𝐸's regenerative abilities, realizing that this one was different from the gray ones he had encountered before. This 𝐿𝐸 could think. 𝐿𝐸 focused intently, determined to prove his strength. He challenged his opponent, eager to see the full extent of their power. In response, 𝐿𝐸 unleashed a torrent of fiery strands from his fingertips, which struck the target and erupted in a brilliant explosion. As the smoke dissipated, the 𝐿𝐸 emerged, but it was missing its limbs. Suddenly, 6 gray 𝐿𝐸 burst forth from the main creature, targeting the civilians. Hawks swiftly decided to assist them, leaving 𝐿𝐸 to confront the larger foe. 𝐿𝐸 contemplated the situation, realizing that the 𝐿𝐸 had expressed a longing for a one-on-one battle. He pondered the creature's abilities, knowing that holding back could be dangerous. Just then, the 𝐿𝐸 began to regenerate completely. With renewed determination, 𝐿𝐸 declared that he would unleash enough heat to vaporize the creature. He released a massive fireball from his chest, which seemed to obliterate the 𝐿𝐸. However, from the corner of his eye, he noticed a hood falling through the air, indicating that the 𝐿𝐸 had not been defeated. The 𝐿𝐸, now fully restored, launched a tendril from its severed head, striking 𝐿𝐸 in the eye. The hero collapsed to the ground, motionless, while the 𝐿𝐸 surveyed its surroundings. It taunted the air, questioning if anyone stronger existed. A tremor shook the ground as a new presence arrived. Zeiram appeared behind the 𝐿𝐸, confidently asserting his superiority. The 𝐿𝐸 charged at him with its mouth wide open, but Zeiram swiftly drew 2 blades and drove them into the creature's jaw. With a powerful knee strike, he forced the blades deeper, preventing the 𝐿𝐸 from closing its mouth. Zeiram then delivered a fierce kick to the 𝐿𝐸's stomach, sending it crashing into a nearby building. The 𝐿𝐸 emerged, yanking the blades from its body. It enlarged its arm and slammed Zeiram into the ground. As the creature prepared to attack again, Zeiram's hand transformed into a gun, which he used to blast off the 𝐿𝐸's limbs. He then dashed toward the 𝐿𝐸, executing a flip and delivering a powerful axe kick to its head, but the 𝐿𝐸 quickly regenerated once more. The 𝐿𝐸 extended web-like appendages from its back and soared toward Zeiram, lifting him high into the air before hurling him back down, creating a massive crater upon impact. As Zeiram struggled to rise, the 𝐿𝐸 landed in front of him and shot 2 tendrils, one piercing his left shoulder and the other his right calf. The 𝐿𝐸 arrogantly proclaimed itself the strongest. Undeterred, Zeiram stood up and charged at the creature, landing a punch to its gut. He moved his hand through the 𝐿𝐸's body, grasping its spine with both hands. With a powerful motion, Zeiram tore the 𝐿𝐸 in half, discarding the top half to the ground. He continued to dismantle the lower half before approaching the top half, which attempted to rise. The 𝐿𝐸 looked up to see Zeiram pointing his gun hand directly at its head, realization dawning as it understood its vulnerability. Zeiram asked if it had any final words. The 𝐿𝐸 stammered, acknowledging Zeiram's strength. As the creature finished speaking, Zeiram fired a blast that obliterated the top half of the 𝐿𝐸's head. Just as Zeiram prepared to leave, he narrowly dodged a feather that shot toward him. Turning, he spotted Hawks, who was also on his feet. He considered ignoring them until he was unexpectedly kicked in the stomach. 𝐒𝐻𝐸, the pro hero, declared that while she usually preferred a fair fight, she was ready to take on a tough villain even while injured. Zeiram retaliated against her, but Hawk's feathers struck him, hampering his movement due to his injured leg. 𝐿𝐸 launched a fireball at him, which Zeiram evaded before landing a punch on Hawks, causing the winged hero to stagger. Before Zeiram could react, 𝐒𝐻𝐸 kicked him in the chest, and 𝐿𝐸 followed up with a fiery strike to the same spot, igniting his fist beforehand, which pierced through Zeiram. Just as 𝐼𝐻𝐬 made his realization, Zeiram let out a shriek as he pulled himself away from the robot remains, his tendrils retracting. The heroes looked on in surprise as Zeiram anchored himself to the ground. The 2 buildings beside him began to shift, rising from the earth to form 2 enormous hands. The section of the street in front of them split apart, transforming into a massive mouth with sharp pillars resembling teeth. The heroes attempted to attack, but they were unprepared for this sudden turn of events. The buildings seized Hawks and 𝐒𝐸, slamming them down, while a massive, sticky tongue emerged from the mouth, enveloping endeavor. Realizing that all of them were incapacitated, Zeiram detached himself from the structures. His long, insect-like legs emerged from beneath him as he crawled away, retreating to his base to construct a new body. Meanwhile, Zeiram made his way to the new League of Villains base. Upon arrival, he noticed Toga and 𝗂𝐷𝐵 lounging on the couch. 𝐿𝐴 and Twice were engaged in a playful fashion competition, while Spinner was preoccupied with his own antics. Kurohige was busy cleaning glasses, and Shigaraki was nowhere to be found. Zeiram passed by the other members and approached Shigaraki's room. He knocked gently on the door. "Come in," Shigaraki replied. Noticing Shigaraki's absence from the others, Zeiram inquired about his leadership. Shigaraki questioned whether he was a good leader. Zeiram reassured him that he had come far and possessed a unique personality suited for leadership, praising his knowledge of games. Despite being used, Zeiram felt compelled to offer Shigaraki companionship. As he expressed this, he embraced Shigaraki from behind. Shigaraki, feeling a sense of comfort, leaned into Zeiram, unaware of the crooked smile on Zeiram's face. After spending hours together, Zeiram informed Shigaraki that he had to leave. Once outside, he began his journey to UA. At UA, most of the staff gathered in 𝐒𝐻𝐬's office to discuss their findings. 𝐒𝐻𝐬 revealed that after hacking into the cameras and reviewing the footage, he discovered that Zeiram was actually the hat he wore, not the person himself. Vlad King exclaimed in disbelief, questioning if the eerie human face on the hat was indeed his true face. 𝐒𝐻𝐬 confirmed that the body Zeiram used was a robot disguised by his tendrils, crafted from an unknown metal. After nearly 2 hours of discussion about Zeiram, Aizawa decided to leave. As he walked home, he sensed someone watching him but dismissed the feeling. However, as he turned down another street, Zeiram tackled him. Aizawa quickly escaped the grip and wrapped his capture tape around the assassin. Zeiram declared his intention to eliminate Aizawa, tearing through the tape and attempting to seize him again. Aizawa, relying on his speed, dodged the attack. Aware that he couldn't harm Zeiram, he focused on evading him. Their chase led them to a rooftop, but Aizawa's luck soon ran out as Zeiram caught him by the throat, lifting him into the air. Aizawa, struggling to breathe, asked why Zeiram wanted to kill him. Zeiram explained that only 4 individuals posed a threat to him, and he had already eliminated 2, with Aizawa being the 3rd. When Aizawa inquired about the 4th, Zeiram revealed it was the doctor who had worked for 𝐿1, dismissing Shigaraki as a potential threat due to his need for a new father figure. With that, Zeiram ended Aizawa's life. Back at his base, a figure dressed in a black vest, fedora, and plague doctor mask appeared. He wore a red scarf, gold cufflinks, and black shoes, with a small spray device protruding from the tip of his mask. This was Shin Nemoto, known by his assassin alias, Veritas. Thanking his friend for the name, Zeiram proposed a plan for revenge, expressing the need to set an example for the world. Veritas, upon hearing this, looked at Zeiram and nodded in agreement. The 2 assassins soon stood before the imposing entrance of Tartarus. Zeiram approached the massive metal door and struck it with a powerful punch, creating a dent and sending it crashing off its hinges, breaking through the wall behind it. They entered the facility together. Veritas received instructions to head to the 3rd floor, specifically cell block 395, while Zeiram would meet him later in the security room. Veritas nodded and made his way down the corridor. After a while, he arrived at the cell he sought, feeling a mix of anticipation and determination. Meanwhile, Zeiram walked through the halls and encountered the villain Muscular. Without hesitation, he broke the cell holding Muscular, but before the villain could express gratitude, Zeiram swiftly dispatched him. Continuing his path, he eliminated other villains associated with the League, delivering quick endings to each. Mustard met his fate with a decisive blow, while Moonfish faced a more brutal end. Back with Veritas, he stood before Overhaul's cell. Overhaul greeted him with a taunt, acknowledging Veritas's impressive entrance. However, Veritas clarified that he was no longer under Overhaul's control and sought revenge for the manipulation he had endured. In a swift motion, Veritas drew a weapon and ended Overhaul's life before heading to the security office, where Zeiram awaited him. Curious about their next move, 𝗟𝗏𝗧 inquired about the plan. Zeiram pointed to a vent, instructing 𝗟𝗏𝗧 to release gas into it. 𝗟𝗏𝗧 adjusted his mask, activating a mechanism that released a green gas into the vents, filling the hallways while leaving their room untouched. Zeiram explained that he intended to instill fear in heroes, villains, and civilians alike. He then ignited a lighter and tossed it into the vent, igniting the gas in a powerful explosion that eliminated everyone in the building. As Zeiram and 𝗟𝗏𝗧 exited, they walked past the chaos, laughter echoing in their wake. Meanwhile, 𝗟𝗏𝐬 was conversing with Shigaraki, who was furious about a failed plan. 𝗟𝗏𝐬 calmly explained that their emissary had different intentions for his successor. Shigaraki, feeling betrayed, demanded 𝗟𝗏𝐬 leave his presence. After 𝗟𝗏𝐬 exited, he expressed frustration at the situation, pondering who the true successor might be. In a flashback, 𝗟𝗏𝐬 recalled a conversation with 𝐼𝐼 about a servant named 𝗟𝗏𝐽, who could track the scent of the true successor. However, when 𝗟𝗏𝐬 presented one of Shigaraki's hands to 𝗟𝗏𝐽, the giant declared it was not the scent of the new emissary and left to search for the correct one. Back in Shigaraki's room, he was consumed by anger and despair, destroying his belongings in a fit of rage. After a moment of reflection, he called Zeiram, his voice shaky with emotion. Zeiram quickly arrived and found Shigaraki in a corner, visibly upset. He embraced Shigaraki, offering comfort and reminding him of his strength and status as a feared villain. Shigaraki, feeling reassured, expressed a longing to call Zeiram Dad, which surprised Zeiram but brought a smile to his face. They shared a moment of camaraderie, playing video games and enjoying each other's company. Eventually, Zeiram had to leave, and Shigaraki hugged him goodbye. Once Zeiram was outside, he allowed his facade to drop. Taking a detour through a forest, he suddenly felt the ground tremble beneath him. A massive figure emerged, introducing itself as 𝗟𝗏𝐽 and declaring that Zeiram must prove himself worthy of being the new emissary. As the giant swung at Zeiram, he deftly dodged and countered with an uppercut. 𝗟𝗏𝐽 attempted to grab him, but Zeiram anticipated the move, using blades to stab into the giant's hands. Despite the pain, 𝗟𝗏𝐽 slammed Zeiram into the ground. When Zeiram regained his footing, he realized the giant had vanished. Feeling a rumble beneath him, he struck the ground with all his might, landing a blow between 𝗟𝗏𝐽's eyes. Seizing the opportunity, he pulled the giant down and delivered a powerful punch to his chest, sending him crashing into a mountain. The giant stomped down on Zeiram, but Zeiram was quick. He managed to escape the giant's grasp and, with a surprising burst of strength, struck the giant's teeth, causing them to crack. Zeiram then crawled out and delivered a powerful punch to the giant's eye. Seizing the opportunity, he grabbed the giant's left arm and twisted it, rendering it immobile. Next, he targeted the giant's right ankle, twisting it sharply, which caused the giant to stumble. Fed up with a massive opponent, Zeiram launched a decisive blow to the giant's nose, sending the giant's head snapping back. The force of the impact caused him to lose consciousness, leaving him dazed. Despite the creature's intimidating presence, Zeiram recognized its potential usefulness and chose to wait. Hours passed until darkness fell, and 𝗟𝗏𝐽 finally regained consciousness. He acknowledged Zeiram's strength, expressing his readiness to serve as a new ally. Zeiram then informed him that they would be meeting the rest of the group, but he withheld the group's name for the time being. After a brief walk, they arrived at a warehouse where the rest of the team awaited. Zeiram introduced 𝗟𝗏𝐽 as their newest member, emphasizing his role as their muscle. He then revealed the group's name, the Abominate Assassin Society. Zeiram, seeking a rare moment of relaxation, settled into a comfortable chair at their base while Tokoyami and Nemoto undertook assassin missions. 𝗟𝗶H remained with the League, leaving Zeiram to enjoy his break. However, the sound of 𝗟𝗏𝐽's footsteps interrupted his peace. The giant approached and knelt before Zeiram, eager to serve. Zeiram tasked him with locating Kyūdai and eliminating him, explaining that Garaki's past allegiance to their former emissary did not guarantee his loyalty to their cause. Meanwhile, in a lab in Hosu, chaos reigned as 𝗟𝗏𝗧, the assassin, moved through the facility. He swiftly dispatched guards with precision, using a combination of stealth and skill to navigate the area. The scent of smoke filled the air as he eliminated threats, leaving no one standing in his wake. Upon reaching the final target, he completed his mission with ruthless efficiency, preparing to collect his reward. In a hidden club that served as a front for illicit activities, Mikaboshi navigated the underground hallways. When confronted by attackers, he swiftly disarmed them, showcasing his combat prowess. He moved with stealth, ensuring he remained undetected while neutralizing threats. Upon reaching the main office, he sent Dark Shadow to eliminate the man in charge, who had developed a disturbing appetite for flesh. Unfazed, Mikaboshi continued on his path to collect his payment. Meanwhile, 𝐷𝐴 relaxed at a bar with Shigaraki, Kurogiri, and Twice. Their banter turned into a heated argument, with insults flying back and forth. Kurogiri intervened, urging them to stop acting like children, which startled both 𝐷𝐴 and Shigaraki into 𝐒𝐵𝐵𝐸. After calming down, 𝐷𝐴 inquired about Zeiram's significance to Shigaraki. Shigaraki revealed that Zeiram had helped him find purpose after the loss of their MSTR, which surprised 𝐷𝐴, who suspected manipulation. In a secret facility, hundreds of containers held Nomu, and Kyudai Garaki, an elderly man with a long white mustache, was deep in thought. A knock at the door startled him, as he had believed this location to be well hidden. Upon opening the door, he was met by 𝐺𝐼𝐴, who had come to deliver a message from Zeiram. As they walked through the facility, 𝐺𝐼𝐴 seized Garaki, revealing that Zeiram wanted him eliminated to prevent any disruption to his plans. Garaki questioned the reasoning behind his fate, but 𝐺𝐼𝐴 remained resolute, prepared to follow his new MSDR's orders. The last thing Kyudai sees is 𝐺𝐼𝐴 as the giant squeezes him with immense force. In the League of Villains headquarters, Kurogiri is tidying up the bar when the phone rings. It's not Kurogiri's phone, it's the bar's phone. He answers, asking who is on the line. The voice on the other end demands to speak with the leader of the League of Villains, making it clear that this is not a request. Kurogiri quickly calls for Shigaraki. When Shigaraki arrives, Kurogiri informs him that someone wishes to speak with him. Kurogiri puts the call on speaker. The voice introduces itself as 𝐴𝐴, the leader of the Meta Liberation Front. He explains that their goal is to ensure everyone can use their quirks freely, and the League of Villains has become too well known, obstructing their mission. He warns Shigaraki that they have over 116,000 members and a satellite monitoring their headquarters, capable of informing the heroes and police of their location. He poses a question: would Shigaraki prefer to fall to the police or to them? Shigaraki responds with a confident laugh, expressing their willingness to fight back. 𝐴𝐴 instructs them to meet in Daika City within the hour. After the call ends, Kurogiri expresses concern about how they will win. Shigaraki reassures him that they will fight with everything they have, and when the enemy believes they have won, their father will arrive to destroy them all. Shigaraki gathers the rest of the gang and explains the situation. 𝐷𝐴 questions Shigaraki's confidence in their father showing up. Shigaraki insists that their father cares about them. Kurogiri is instructed to bring 𝐿𝐹, the massive humanoid high-end Nomu, to join them. Kurogiri complies and soon returns with 𝐿𝐹. The group heads to the meeting location set by the 𝐿𝐴. Upon arrival, they realize the enemy is not bluffing. They truly have a vast number of soldiers. Despite the odds, Shigaraki remains determined. A man in a black suit and glasses steps forward, introducing himself as 𝐿𝐴, a leader within the Meta Liberation Army. He taunts the League, declaring that they should prepare for defeat. Meanwhile, far away, Zeiram observes the unfolding events through hacked cameras and the 𝐒𝐮𝐩𝐩𝐸's satellite feed. He contemplates whether the League can succeed, noting that if they fail, he can simply take 𝐷𝐴 and Shigaraki and leave. Seeing him right now, so confident, was unsettling. The thought crossed his mind that he shouldn't care for him. With a sigh, he decided to see how things would unfold. At that moment, the League was engaged in a fierce battle against multiple opponents. 𝐶𝐿 shouted in frustration, realizing that their enemies seemed to be growing stronger. Shigaraki glanced at 𝐿𝐴, who was still shouting without reason, and deduced that it must be due to that villain's quirk. He ordered 𝐿𝐻 to take action. The 𝐼𝐻𝐬 charged at the villain only to discover that it was a decoy, shattering upon impact. 𝐿𝐻 began to wreak havoc, but failed to notice the blue-skinned female approaching from behind. She placed her hand on his back and whispered a single word, boom. An enormous explosion erupted, causing significant damage. As 𝐿𝐻 attempted to regenerate, she continued to plant explosives, the heat from the blasts ultimately overwhelming him. After dispatching the 𝐼𝐻𝐬, she announced her presence, revealing herself as another head of the Meta Liberation Army. The villains were in disarray, with one of them exclaiming that they could handle the situation despite the odds. Spinner shouted for Twice to focus on the fight instead of complaining. However, one of the opposing villains landed a blow on Spinner's face, and after about 30 minutes, the League found themselves outnumbered. Shigaraki called for 𝐾𝐮𝐲 to teleport them out, but before he could act, he was restrained by clones of 𝐾𝐮𝐬. A hooded figure emerged, introducing himself as 𝗟𝗏𝗏, another leader of the Meta Liberation Front, and gestured to a well-dressed man beside him, who was identified as their leader, 𝗟𝗏𝗏. 𝗟𝗏𝗏 taunted Shigaraki, asking if he was ready to meet his end. As he approached, Shigaraki reached out, but 𝗟𝗏𝗏 panicked and enlarged his body, delivering a powerful kick that broke Shigaraki's leg. To ensure he couldn't move, 𝗟𝗏𝗏 broke the other leg as well, causing Shigaraki to scream in agony. A soldier approached 𝗟𝗏𝗏, whispering about an approaching threat. The Meta Liberation Army retreated to a safer distance, preparing their range quirk users to target the League. Suddenly, something crashed to the ground in front of them, and from the dust emerged the assassin, Zeiram. Without uttering a word, he swung his sword, and the sheer force of the slash incapacitated the goons around him, ensuring the leaders remained unharmed. Panic spread among the villains, and as Trumpet attempted to shout a warning, Zeiram swiftly shot him. He moved on to stab 𝗟𝗏𝗏 in the heart and then cut off 𝐾𝐮𝐬's hands before striking her neck. 𝗟𝗏𝗏 was in a frenzy after witnessing his squad's swift demise. He transformed himself into a towering black humanoid figure, comparable in size to 𝐾𝐭𝐡𝐨𝐫, vowing to crush Zeiram. However, with a swift motion, Zeiram severed 𝗟𝗏𝗏's legs, delivering a line about karma for hurting Tamura before shooting him in the back of the head. Once the battle was over, Zeiram approached Shigaraki, knelt down, and embraced him, expressing his sorrow. Shigaraki, confused, looked down to see one of Zeiram's weapons embedded in his chest. Zeiram apologized, reminding him of a lesson about trust, and bid farewell as Shigaraki's breathing ceased. A single tear fell from Zeiram's eye as he mourned the loss. 𝐾𝐮𝐲, enraged, attempted to trap Zeiram in a portal, but the assassin was too quick. 𝐾𝐮𝐲 questioned why he would kill someone who saw him as a father. Zeiram explained that he wanted to spare Shigaraki from the pain of witnessing his plans unfold. He then seized 𝐾𝐮𝐲 by the neck and threw him to the ground, stomping until a snapping sound echoed. 𝗏𝗏𝗏 attempted to ambush Zeiram, but the assassin effortlessly captured his wrist, pulling him close and extracting his heart with bare hands. Twice lunged at him, vowing revenge, but Zeiram easily overpowered him, tearing his head from his body. He dodged an attack from Toga, delivering a powerful punch that incapacitated her. Finally, Zeiram grabbed Spinner by the neck, squeezing until there was a decisive snap. The aftermath left a scene of chaos, with BLD everywhere and only 2 living assassins remaining. As they walked back to base, one was covered in ash, while the other was stained with BLD. When asked why he had killed them all, Zeiram simply replied that he was getting too attached. Zeiram was filled with despair. Even though his actions were for Shigaraki's benefit, he loathed the fact that he had taken the life of someone he viewed as a son. More than just loathing, he felt a deep sense of disgust toward himself. He saw himself as a monster. Yet, he kept reminding himself that it was all for the greater good, and at least Shigaraki would be spared from the pain of his plans. Still, misery consumed him. Dabi and Tokoyami attempted to lift his spirits, but nothing seemed to work. Even a chaotic outing did little to change his mood. Eventually, they decided to step back. Nemoto inquired if their boss was still feeling down. 𝗟𝗶𝐻 replied that anyone would feel the same after such an act. 𝗚𝐼𝐼𝐻 admitted he had never experienced that kind of loss, but he could understand the pain. Despite their thoughts, Zeiram could hear them. He felt a sense of relief knowing they didn't view him as pathetic, but he recognized that he needed to stop wallowing and refocus. So, he stood up and prepared to go hunting, setting his sights on the current #1 hero, 𝗏𝗏𝐻. As he left his room, Zeiram asked 𝗟𝗶𝐻 if he wanted to join him in confronting the hero. 𝗟𝗶𝐻 eagerly agreed. They made their way to 𝗏𝗏𝐻's residence, but upon arrival it appeared deserted. However, they were not deceived, knowing about the training area in the basement. They quietly entered the house and descended the stairs, where they found 𝗏𝗏𝐻 and his son, 𝗏𝗱, engaged in a rigorous training session. To an outsider, it might have looked like abuse. Zeiram instructed 𝗟𝗶𝐻 to take 𝗏𝗱 away, acknowledging 𝗟𝗶𝐻's longing for revenge but also recognizing his current limitations. 𝗟𝗶𝐻 nodded, and they positioned themselves. Zeiram signaled with a swift motion of his hand, and they charged in, with 𝗟𝗶𝐻 swiftly lifting 𝗏𝗱. The sudden intrusion left 𝗏𝗱 momentarily stunned. Meanwhile, Zeiram struck 𝗏𝗏𝐻 with such force that the hero crashed through the wall. They quickly made their escape, racing up the stairs and out of the house, with 𝗟𝗶𝐻 still carrying 𝗏𝗱. Once outside, 𝗏𝗱 snapped out of his daze and attempted to unleash ice at 𝗟𝗶𝐻, but 𝗟𝗶𝐻 countered with his blue flames, quickly recapturing the boy. Just then, 𝗏𝗏𝐻 burst through the door, flames erupting around him as he confronted Zeiram. He declared that there would be nothing left but ash after their encounter. As the hero prepared to unleash fire, 𝗟𝗶𝐻 placed 𝗏𝗱 in the way, reminding 𝗏𝗏𝐻 of his responsibilities. The brief pause allowed Zeiram to deliver a powerful punch to 𝗏𝗏𝐻's face, sending him crashing back into his already damaged house, which began to ignite. 𝗏𝗏𝐻 emerged, angrier than ever, but his rage only fueled the flames consuming his home. Zeiram instructed 𝗟𝗶𝐻 to leave, assuring him he would handle the situation. 𝗟𝗶𝐻 nodded and took 𝗏𝗱 to safety. Zeiram then taunted 𝗏𝗏𝐻, asking if he was ready to face his demise. They both threw punches simultaneously, creating a shockwave that sent them both staggering back. However, Zeiram was quicker, seizing 𝗏𝗏𝐻 by the throat before he could react. The hero attempted to retaliate with fire, but it was in vain as Zeiram slammed him into the ground repeatedly until he could barely breathe. After several moments, Zeiram was forced to release him as the heat became unbearable. Seizing the opportunity, 𝗏𝗏𝐻 unleashed a massive fireball, but Zeiram walked through the flames with ease, causing the hero to falter in fear. As Zeiram approached, 𝗏𝗏𝐻 threw another punch, which Zeiram effortlessly caught. He remarked that 𝗏𝗏𝐻 was nowhere near the level of power that All Might had possessed. With that, he delivered a devastating blow, creating a hole in 𝗏𝗏𝐻's midsection. As the hero struggled, 𝗟𝗶𝐻 returned, having ensured 𝗏𝗱 was at a safe distance. Zeiram told 𝗟𝗶𝐻 he could finish 𝗏𝗏𝐻 off, as he had other matters to attend to. 𝗟𝗶𝐻 then unleashed his blue flames, engulfing 𝗏𝗏𝐻 and reducing him to ashes. Meanwhile, Zeiram walked to a secluded area by a cliffside adorned with flowers. There, he found a tall man with long white hair and gray eyes, peacefully watching the sunset. Zeiram sat beside him and commented on his tranquility despite the world's chaos. The man revealed he was nearing the end of his life and wanted to enjoy his remaining moments. Zeiram proposed the idea of creating a society where the strong would lead, regardless of their quirks. He extended his hand to the man, now known as 𝗏𝗏𝐻, who smiled beneath his mask and accepted the offer to join the Abominate Assassin Society. In a different setting, the students of classroom 1A were engulfed in sorrow. The loss of All Might weighed heavily on them, but the death of their homeroom teacher affected them even more profoundly. Among them, Hitoshi Shinso felt the deepest anguish. As the adopted son of Shota Aizawa and Hisashi Yamada, the news of Aizawa's death shattered him. Both he and Yamada were left devastated, rarely speaking, with tear-streaked faces as they isolated themselves from others. After weeks of mourning, they reluctantly returned to school, but they were forever changed. Shinso still found it difficult to communicate with his friends. Yamada kept his head down at his desk, trying to maintain a cheerful demeanor while teaching, though both students and faculty could see through his facade. The entire school had been in mourning for months. In the Class 1A dormitory, the students were either sulking or playing games. Bakugo, despite his usual self-centeredness, recognized that 𝐶𝐮 needed someone to lift his spirits or at least instill some confidence in him. He made his way to the second floor and knocked on 𝐶𝐮's door. 𝐶𝐮's voice came from inside, insisting that whoever it was should go away. Ignoring the protest, Bakugo entered the room. He addressed 𝐶𝐮 directly, emphasizing that sitting around and wallowing in sadness wouldn't change anything. 𝐶𝐮's anger flared at Bakugo's words, feeling as though his feelings were being dismissed. He retorted, questioning if Bakugo was suggesting he shouldn't care about the loss. Bakugo clarified that he wasn't saying that at all. The situation was tense as 𝐶𝐮 confronted Bakugo, expressing his frustration. He accused Bakugo of being selfish and egotistical, claiming that he only cared about himself. Bakugo remained silent, his head bowed, his hair obscuring his eyes. 𝐶𝐮 recalled a painful memory from 12 years ago. His only friend, whom he considered a brother, had been kidnapped and was never found, likely dead. This loss had shaped his behavior. He pushed people away out of fear of losing them again. He understood 𝐶𝐮's feelings and shared his own pain, explaining that his longing to become a hero stemmed from a wish to prevent others from experiencing similar tragedies. He encouraged 𝐶𝐮 to channel his emotions into becoming a better hero, ensuring that no one else would suffer as he had. 𝐶𝐮's eyes widened in surprise at Bakugo's revelation. He acknowledged that it was the most meaningful thing he had heard from Bakugo and vowed to become a better hero to ensure that the person responsible for his father's death would not harm anyone else. Meanwhile, Nizu was in a conference with Detective Tsukachi. Nizu inquired about the League of Villains, which had been found dead in Daika City, along with the Meta Liberation Army. However, 𝐼𝐷𝐵's body was missing. Nizu's expression shifted to a smile as he pieced together the implications. He explained that 𝐼𝐷𝐵 had been working as a spy for Zeiram, who had eliminated the League once they had served their purpose. This confirmed Nizu's theory about the connection between 𝐼𝐷𝐵 and the recent events surrounding 𝐒𝐿𝐴vor's demise. As the detective departed, Nizu pondered Zeiram's intentions, contemplating the identity of Izuku Midoriya. Elsewhere, a vigilante donned in an all-might hoodie was swiftly taking down villains with agility and skill. After dispatching them, he noticed a shadow looming overhead. Panic set in as he recognized the infamous assassin responsible for All Might's downfall. Without hesitation, he attempted to escape, but Zeiram caught him and pulled him back. The vigilante braced himself for a confrontation, but Zeiram clarified that he only wished to talk. Surprised, the vigilante listened as Zeiram expressed his longing to recruit him for a greater cause. He argued that the hero society was corrupt and that despite All Might's efforts, the number of villains remained unchanged. Zeiram offered a different path, one that promised progress and change, appealing to the vigilante's experiences of being marginalized due to his quirk. After a moment of contemplation, the vigilante accepted Zeiram's offer, acknowledging the truth in his words. They set off together, and as they left, Zeiram placed a peculiar bud on the rooftop, which began to split open. In the dark alleyways of Hosu City, a man in a black suit, known as 𝐼𝐴, was on a mission. He was hunting a weak thug who had failed to repay a debt. When he found his target, he swiftly eliminated him, leaving only the evidence of his actions behind. After collecting his payment, he hurried back to base for a meeting with Zeiram, feeling a mix of excitement and nerves about meeting the rest of the group. Upon arrival, he unexpectedly encountered a giant who demanded to know his business. Just as the situation seemed tense, Zeiram intervened, introducing 𝐼𝐴 as the newest member of their team. With that, the giant stepped aside, allowing 𝐼𝐴 to enter. Once everyone had gathered in the main room, Zeiram introduced 𝐼𝐴 to the group, which included Gigantomachia, 9, 𝐼𝐷𝐵, Veritas, and Mikaboshi. 𝐼𝐴 recognized Tokoyami as a student from UA, and Tokoyami confirmed that he had been opened up to new perspectives by Zeiram. Now, the protagonist had become a spy for their cause against the false heroes. The gathering was called to unveil the plan, which had remained a mystery until now. The leader explained that over time, It had become clear that this world was beyond saving. Corruption ran rampant, infecting everyone from heroes to ordinary citizens. However, after much contemplation, a solution had been discovered. Recently, 𝐼 had acquired a unique ability from a citizen. This quirk allowed the user to create an exact duplicate of anyone they had ever seen. The intriguing aspect of this power was that the user could modify the duplicate's mind as they wished. With this ability, they could finally initiate the change needed in society. The leader clarified that the intention was not merely to eliminate all heroes, as that would not resolve the underlying issues. Instead, they planned to reset humanity entirely, starting anew with themselves in control. Curiosity filled the room as the followers pondered how such a monumental task would be accomplished. The leader revealed that during every encounter or battle, a small seed had been planted at the location. These seeds, a product of their quirk, would serve as the key to their salvation. One of the followers inquired about the potential threat posed by the heroes who would likely attempt to thwart their plans. The leader reassured them that the seeds were not solely for destruction. They also generated humanoid creatures that would serve their purpose. Additionally, they would need to wear special devices that would protect them when the time came. The leader then displayed small clips, also crafted from their quirk. They explained the strategy. They had taken over an old, run-down 20-story building. Each member would be sent to different locations to mislead the heroes into thinking the leader was elsewhere. This was crucial, as their quirk needed to remain active to power their weapon. With determination, the leader encouraged everyone to move forward and create a better world. Days later, the heroes at UA were gathered, strategizing on how to confront Zeiram. Just as they were about to delve deeper into their discussion, a student burst into the room, urgency evident in his voice. He informed them that a shocking broadcast was being transmitted globally. On the screen, Zeiram's image appeared, and he addressed the world with a chilling declaration. He introduced the Abominate Assassin Society, proclaiming that they deemed the world too corrupt to continue. He ominously announced that within 5 days, humanity would face extinction. This was not a mere threat. They intended to eradicate everyone and establish a new, improved world in the aftermath. He advised everyone to bid farewell to their loved ones and prepare for their impending fate, leaving them with a haunting farewell. Humanity. The feed abruptly cut off, leaving all the heroes frozen in shock and fear. Even 𝐒𝐮𝐬 was taken aback by the revelation. However, he quickly regained his composure and got to work. He asked 𝐿𝐼𝐿 if the video footage had been recorded, to which 𝐿𝐼𝐿 confirmed it had. 𝐒𝐮𝐬 instructed him to hand it over, and he immediately began tracking the source of the signal. Such a powerful transmission had to originate from something significant. As he rewatched the video, he noticed a strange humanoid mass of flesh lurking in the background. Switching the video to an energy-detecting lens, he saw the energy levels rising and realized it was connected to Zeiram. A chilling realization struck 𝐒𝐮𝐬. The villain's intentions were far more sinister than he had anticipated. The villain was indeed correct. This was no bluff. Ectoplasm inquired if 𝐒𝐮𝐬 was certain, to which 𝐒𝐮𝐬 affirmed that Zeiram had created bizarre monsters using his quirk. These creatures were accumulating energy, and 𝐒𝐮𝐬 deduced that in 5 days, they would be fully charged and unleash an electromagnetic blast powerful enough to affect the entire world. This blast wouldn't just disrupt power, it was designed to stop every heart. The villain was plotting a global purge. 3 days passed, and the heroes worked tirelessly to locate Zeiram while keeping civilians calm amidst the chaos. People were panicking, and governments were relying heavily on the heroes for assistance. The strongest heroes guided civilians to safety bunkers, while the more analytical heroes, like 𝐒𝐮𝐬, focused on tracking the villains. After 3 days of investigation, 𝐒𝐮𝐬 finally made a breakthrough. Once he had the information, he gathered several heroes and some members of Class 1A. Tracking the signal had proven challenging, as the villains had cleverly bounced it off multiple satellites, making it nearly impossible to pinpoint. However, 𝐒𝐮𝐬 identified 7 potential locations from which the signal could have originated. He proposed splitting into groups to investigate the first 6 locations, while they would tackle the last one together, as it was the largest. The heroes were instructed to execute their missions swiftly. Meanwhile, 𝗏𝐷, 𝐾𝐞𝐭𝐚𝐢𝐥𝐬, 𝐴𝐵𝐿, and 𝐬 arrived at the first location, an abandoned warehouse. 𝗏𝐿 reminded everyone to remain quiet and search thoroughly, as they needed to determine if the villains were hiding there. 𝐾𝐞𝐭𝐚 created clones of himself, and they began exploring the premises. While the clones and 𝗬 examined the exterior, 𝗏𝐿 and 𝗏𝐷 scouted the interior. Unbeknownst to them, a figure with a metal-beaked mask and a long black cloak was lurking above. As the figure prepared to descend, the cloak transformed into giant hands. With remarkable speed, the individual leaped down towards 𝗏𝐷. 𝗏𝐿 shouted a warning and pushed 𝗏𝐷 out of the way, but the impact knocked 𝗏𝐿 down, causing severe injury. As the smoke cleared, 𝗏𝐷 saw the villain looming over 𝗏𝐿, declaring that the cataclysm could not be stopped. The villain drew his katana and aimed it at 𝗏𝐿. Enraged, 𝗏𝐷 transformed his body into solid rock and charged at the villain, vowing to take him down. The villain taunted 𝗏𝐷, pointing out his reckless approach. 𝗏𝐷 swung at him, but the villain deftly dodged, using his cloak to ensnare 𝗏𝐷's arm and throw him into some crates. Undeterred, 𝗏𝐷 quickly recovered and charged again, only to be met with a kick to the back of his head. The villain smugly remarked that 𝗏𝐷 could not defeat him alone. At that moment, dozens of ectoplasm clones arrived, demanding to know where the villain's emissary was. The villain expressed annoyance at the overwhelming numbers. While the heroes were distracted, he activated a beacon hidden in his pocket. He skillfully dodged an attack from an ectoplasm clone and swiftly dispatched it. Drawing two guns, he began firing at the clones, unaware of 𝗬 sneaking up behind him. Just as she was about to strike, the cloak transformed into a giant hand and knocked her away. She was caught by one of the clones and quickly got back on her feet to re-engage. With the cloak preoccupied with 𝗬 and the villain focused on the clones, 𝗏𝐷 seized the opportunity to punch the villain in the face, sending him crashing into a wall. The villain slowly rose, his mask cracked and vulnerable. As he contemplated his situation, a clone leaped at him, preparing to attack. Reacting quickly, he grabbed the clone and destroyed it, laughing maniacally. Ectoplasm questioned the villain's laughter, pointing out that he was outnumbered. The villain scoffed at their assumption, declaring them fools. Just then, a grotesque humanoid creature attacked one of the clones, followed by a swarm that began to tear through the remaining clones. The villain turned his attention back to 𝗏𝐷 and 𝗬, charging at 𝗬 with his katana drawn. 𝗏𝐷 dove in to protect her, breaking the katana in the process. However, the villain retaliated, striking 𝗏𝐷 down and pinning him. With 𝗏𝐷 incapacitated, the villain unleashed a relentless assault on 𝗬, leaving her little chance to counterattack. In a moment of desperation, 𝗬 managed to touch the creature pinning 𝗏𝐷, causing its shadow to lift into the air, giving her a glimmer of hope amidst the chaos. And pulled him along. 𝗬 commanded him to release. As 𝐾𝐞𝐭𝐚𝐢𝐥𝐬 began to descend, he attempted to regain his balance, but 𝗏𝐷 struck him in the face once more, sending him crashing into another wall. When he rose, his mask lay shattered, revealing his identity. 𝗏𝐷 and 𝗬 gasped in shock as they recognized their classmate. 𝗏𝐼𝐴𝐚 declared that Zeiram had shown him the flaws of the world and that he intended to assist in correcting them. As he shouted this, dark shadow transformed into numerous sharp projectiles and launched them at the two heroes. 𝗏𝐷 managed to block the onslaught, but 𝗬 sustained cuts. In a swift motion, 𝐾𝐞𝐭𝐚𝐢𝐥𝐬 produced a weapon and aimed it at her, ending her fight. 𝗏𝐷, filled with rage, charged at 𝐾𝐞𝐭𝐚𝐢𝐥𝐬, knowing that Dark Shadow's separation would take time to regroup. He landed a punch to 𝐾𝐞𝐭𝐚𝐢𝐥𝐬's gut and followed up with a knee to his lower body. With a powerful strike to the top of his head, he sent 𝐾𝐞𝐭𝐚𝐢𝐥𝐬 crashing down, creating a crater upon impact. When 𝗏𝐷 lifted him, he realized 𝐾𝐞𝐭𝐚𝐢𝐥𝐬 was unconscious. With their foe down, the creatures ceased their attacks and began to wander aimlessly. The only hero remaining was 𝗏𝐷. He contacted Nizu, informing him that Zeiram was absent and that all his fellow heroes were gone. He had captured 𝐾𝐞𝐭𝐚𝐢𝐥𝐬, who was actually 𝗏𝐼𝐴𝐚, and was heading to the rendezvous point, leaving the villain for the authorities. Nizu advised him to be cautious. After their conversation, 𝗟𝐷 sprinted toward the final location. With Mikaboshi defeated, the first site had proven to be empty, prompting 𝗟𝐷 to move to the rendezvous point. Meanwhile, other heroes were investigating their assigned locations, one being a chemical plant. In the distant future, after 𝗟𝐷 had spoken with Nizu, he expressed disappointment about the first location being a failure, hoping that Mikaboshi was either at one of the other sites or the last one. 𝗟𝗨 agreed, sharing the same hope. Returning to the earlier time PRD, heroes 𝗓𝗏𝐷, Midnight, Fourth Kind, and 𝐴𝐻 infiltrated the abandoned chemical plant. Fourth Kind cautioned them to be careful, as they were unaware of any hazardous chemicals present. The others nodded and began to move stealthily. Fourth Kind ventured upstairs to explore the observation room, while 𝗓𝗏𝐷 surveyed the exterior, and 𝐴𝐻 and Midnight checked the ground floor. As they searched, they failed to notice the green gas slowly filling the lower level until Midnight glanced down, realizing it had already reached their waists. She shouted for everyone to evacuate the building. Fortunately, 𝐴𝐻 and Midnight were near the exit, and as they escaped, the entire first floor erupted in flames. The blast startled Fourth Kind, prompting him to retreat and check on his teammates. Suddenly, he collided with someone. The hero quickly turned and struck the figure in the stomach, sending the villain crashing against the wall. The masked man, adorned in a plague doctor mask, a long red scarf, and a dark outfit, introduced himself as 𝗟𝐷. He apologized, explaining that Zeiram was not present and that he would be Fourth Kind's opponent. Without hesitation, 𝗟𝐷 drew a weapon and shot Fourth Kind in the leg. Following this, he delivered a kick to the hero's head, sending him crashing through the glass. As Fourth Kind attempted to rise, he stumbled, weakened by the injury. 𝗟𝐷 approached casually and kicked him again, this time in the chest, propelling him toward the fiery depths below. After ensuring Fourth Kind was out of the fight, 𝗟𝐷 decided to seek out the remaining heroes, suspecting they were outside. As 𝗟𝐷 prepared to step outside, he noticed the flames transform into glistening glaciers of ice. It seemed the adversaries were approaching him instead. He leaped down to the floor after 𝗓𝗏𝐷 melted the ice away. Upon landing, he drew his weapon and aimed it at 𝐴𝐻, but 𝗓𝗏𝐷 intervened by acting 𝐒𝐮𝐩𝐩 as a barrier. After blocking the shot, 𝗓𝗏𝐷 retaliated with an ice projectile aimed directly at 𝗟𝐷. 𝗟𝐷 sprang into the air, using the metal in his boot to shatter the ice beneath him with a powerful stomp. He then executed a flip, bringing his heel down toward 𝗓𝗏𝐷's head. Just as he was about to make contact, a WHP ensnared his leg and hurled him aside. Looking up, he recognized Midnight. Curious about her abilities, 𝗟𝐷 inquired about her quirk. Midnight revealed that her quirk, Somnambulist, allowed her to emit a sleep-inducing aroma from her body, which was particularly effective on males. She regretted sharing that information, realizing he had somehow compelled her to disclose it. Determined to take him down, she began to fill the room with the gas while 𝗓𝗏𝐷 and 𝐴𝐻 made a hasty exit. However, they overlooked the fact that the mask 𝗓𝗏𝐷 wore also functioned as a gas mask, rendering him immune to Midnight's quirk. Once the room was saturated with the sleep gas, 𝗟𝐷 seized the opportunity to dash behind Midnight. He swiftly grabbed her arm and twisted it, causing a fracture. Then, he drew a knife, ensuring she was incapacitated before making his escape. Without hesitation, 𝗟𝐷 turned his attention to 𝐴𝐻. The hero dodged and unleashed a surge of electricity. 𝗟𝐷 jumped, but the metal in his boots conducted the shock, causing him to fall. He hit the ground hard but quickly rolled to evade another ice projectile aimed at him. While 𝗓𝗏𝐷 struggled to see through the ice barrier, 𝗟𝐷 propelled himself off the icy surface, landing directly behind the hero. He tripped 𝗓𝗏𝐷 and pinned him to the gravel. He asked 𝗓𝗏𝐷 if he knew a man named 𝗂𝐻 Todoroki. The mention of the name caused 𝗓𝗏𝐷 to freeze in shock. He confirmed that 𝗂𝐻 was his deceased brother. 𝗟𝐷 revealed that 𝗂𝐻 was very much alive, now known as 𝗂𝗶𝐷, and had abandoned his family for his own interests and those of their group. He promised to send 𝗓𝗏𝐷's regards to him. After delivering the news, 𝗟𝐷 drew his gun and aimed it at 𝗓𝗏𝐷's head. The hero was overwhelmed with emotion upon learning of his brother's betrayal. After listening to 𝗂𝐼𝐼𝐼's anguished sobs for a brief moment, 𝗂𝗏𝗏 pulled the trigger. 𝐴𝐴 witnessed the tragic scene unfold as his classmate was shot while in despair, which pushed him over the edge. He unleashed all his electric energy, electrifying the entire area. The surge caused a power outage, leaving 𝐴𝐴 disoriented as he struggled to regain his senses. Meanwhile, 𝗂𝗏𝗏 lay unconscious from the blast. In the aftermath, 𝐴𝐴 reported the situation, noting that Zeiram was absent and the others were gone. He planned to meet the remaining heroes at the rendezvous point. With 2 out of 7 locations confirmed to be without Zeiram, the uncertainty loomed: would the others be present, or was it merely a tactic by the abominate assassin society to secure their victory and threaten humanity's existence? The villain announced that the hero had taken their time. 𝗏𝗏 quickly turned around to see 𝗂𝗏, who caught her tongue as she flung it at him. His hand began to glow ominously. With a sinister tone, he declared that it was time to say goodbye. In an instant, he unleashed a torrent of flames, igniting the entire floor and causing glass to shatter. Everything around him turned to ash, leaving only 𝗂𝗏 standing amidst the chaos. He effortlessly leaped through one of the broken windows, landing outside in front of the heroes. He tossed the tip of 𝗏𝗏's tongue at 𝗏𝗏, taunting him with the remnants of his fallen comrade. Fueled by rage, 𝗏𝗏 charged at 𝗂𝗏, who shot fire at him. However, 𝗏𝗏 managed to block the flames with the webbing between his arms. In a swift motion, he punched 𝗂𝗏 squarely in the jaw, sending the villain crashing to the ground, seemingly unconscious. 𝗏𝗏, however, let his guard down as he approached to confirm 𝗂𝗏's defeat. Shouted a warning, but it was too late. 𝗂𝗏 seized the opportunity, grabbing the hero's face and unleashing a fierce blast of fire. When the smoke cleared, 𝗏𝗏 was left in a devastating state. Ryukyu lunged at 𝗂𝗏, but he dodged her attack and retaliated with flames aimed at her. The dragon hero flapped her wings, redirecting the fire back at 𝗂𝗏. He narrowly avoided the flames but was caught off guard by a powerful strike from Ryukyu. The impact sent him reeling, possibly injuring him. Despite the pain, he charged at her again, noticing her growing anxiety, which led to more frantic attacks and openings in her defense. Timing his move perfectly, 𝗂𝗏 leaped through her fingers and aimed directly at her chest. He concentrated all his flame power into a single, massive fireball and released it. The force of the impact created a significant hole in Ryukyu's chest, causing her to collapse. Just as 𝗂𝗏 began to revel in his victory, a pillar of concrete shot up towards him. He dodged just in time, hearing a voice vow to make him pay for his actions. 𝗂𝗏 smirked, ready for the challenge. He unleashed a barrage of fire, but 𝐒𝐮𝐧𝐼𝐼 easily deflected the flames with cement barriers. 𝐒𝐮𝐧𝐼𝐼 declared that his tyranny would end now. With a swift motion, he manipulated a pillar of cement, slamming it down onto 𝗂𝗏's face, breaking his nose and jaw, and knocking him out cold. After securing 𝗂𝗏 with cement and calling the authorities, 𝐒𝐮𝐧𝐼𝐼 contacted Nizu, informing him of the tragic losses among the heroes in his squad and stating his intention to head to the rendezvous point. As he finished the conversation, he transformed the cement into a wave and rode it towards the next location. They had already faced 3 of the 7 locations, and many heroes had fallen. The unfolding battles promised more challenges ahead. Meanwhile, deep within the sewers, heroes Mirko, Sir Night-Eye, Dynamite, and Anima navigated through the underground tunnels using echolocation with bats. Dynamite expressed his frustration about traveling through the muck, while Night-Eye explained that the sewers were the best route to the old lab, as enemies would least expect them there. Indeed, mindless creatures roamed above, unaware of the heroes' presence below. The heroes continued through the narrow, desolate passageways, the only sounds being their footsteps and the fluttering of bats. However, when the tunnel split into 4 directions, Anima noted that they didn't have enough bats to explore all areas. Night-Eye suggested they split up, instructing everyone to contact the others if they found an exit leading to the facility. The heroes nodded and ventured into their separate paths. Above, the creatures halted as a tall man with long white hair commanded them to search for the heroes, assuming they were underground. The creatures quickly moved towards the entrance and descended into the depths, following the man's footsteps as he navigated the labyrinth in search of the heroes. Meanwhile, the heroes explored their respective areas, but none had yet found a way out. Dynamite was the first to encounter the mindless monsters, dispatching them swiftly with explosive blasts. Mitko followed, defeating her foes with remarkable speed. Night-Eye and Anima soon faced similar challenges, realizing that their presence had not gone unnoticed. Night-Eye evaded one of the creature's attacks, skillfully tossing small weights that struck 3 of the creatures in their heads. Anima, on the other hand, was engaged in a physical struggle, using his unusually dense body to combat the creatures. Unbeknownst to him, a man in black approached. When Anima turned around, it was too late. A small purple projectile shot out and struck his eye. He instinctively covered the wound as it began to bleed. The man warned him that he shouldn't have come there and that he would face the consequences. He unleashed beams from his fingertips, but Anima managed to dodge and summoned animals to attack the man. An army of rats surged from the depths of the dark underworld, charging at the villain. The man recoiled in disgust as the rats swarmed him, but a giant dragon head emerged from his back, crushing the rats and devouring them. He then declared it was Anima's turn, and the dragon head lunged at him, sealing its jaws around him, ending his fight. The man then set out to find others, deciding to target the one closest to him. He navigated through the pathways and encountered 𝐼𝐼𝐼. She was more skilled than Anima, and as he turned the corner, she launched an attack. However, she quickly realized a force field had materialized in front of him, blocking her strike. Understanding the situation, 𝐼𝐼𝐼 swiftly moved behind the villain and delivered a powerful kick to the back of his head, slamming him to the ground. She deduced that he had a quirk enhancing his leg power, which meant she could finish this fight efficiently. The man rolled out of the way of her incoming stomp and tripped her. As she fell, the dragon head emerged again, aiming to bite her legs. She screamed in agony as the creature attacked, leaving her in pain as she struggled. The villain taunted that any other heroes would either flee or come to find him at the lab. Climbing back up the ladder into the complex, the man was suddenly met with an explosion aimed at him. However, he blocked it with another force field. Dynamite shouted that the explosion was merely a distraction. Just then, one of Night-Eye's weights struck the left side of the villain's jaw, twisting his head and causing him to stumble. Night-Eye declared that the villain's tyranny would end there and demanded to know the location of his 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐽. The man refused to divulge any information, claiming that even in jail, he would ensure the planet's destruction. Rising to his feet, 2 dragon heads shot out from his back. Night-Eye and Dynamite narrowly dodged the massive creatures as they charged at the villain. Dynamite unleashed an explosion comparable to a mini-nuke while Night-Eye hurled more weights. The villain managed to block the explosive attack while dodging the weights, but the projectiles accidentally struck Dynamite, sending him flying. Night-Eye seized the opportunity to grab the villain and made eye contact, demanding to know who he was. The man ominously introduced himself as 9, then punched Night-Eye and fired at him. Night-Eye dodged both the punch and the beam, but his eyes widened in fear as he saw what was coming next. 9 raised his hand, summoning a giant thundercloud. Lightning bolts struck the area, culminating in a massive bolt that hit Night-Eye. 9 explained that he had spared Night-Eye's life because his quirk seemed valuable. As 9 placed his hands on Night-Eye's head, he began to absorb his power. Dynamite shouted that he would no longer hold back and blasted 9. The explosion devastated the remnants of the building, leaving only 9 standing amidst the destruction. Night-Eye was reduced to ash. 9 laughed, claiming victory as he now possessed Night-Eye's quirk. However, he was soon met with a barrage of beams and dragon heads, along with a force field that he 𝐒𝐻𝐬 for protection. Dynamite evaded the beams and seized the dragon heads, unleashing an explosion that obliterated them. He then directed a powerful blast at the force field, overwhelming it. The field shattered, and the blast sent 9 crashing to the ground, burned and bruised, until he finally lost consciousness. Dynamite reported to 𝐒𝐮𝐬 that he was the last survivor of his group, confirming the villain's defeat and stating he was heading to the rendezvous point. Unbeknownst to him, the white-haired villain was rising again, a smile on his face. In the many floors and hallways of the once great but now abandoned spaceport, Zeiram observed the chaos unfold. He had already discovered through hacking into UA that he would not be targeted until the end. The only uncertainty was when they would arrive. Just as he pondered this, he heard a voice in his ear. 9 informed him that the heroes had underestimated him and believed he was defeated. He planned to wait until the rest of their members were defeated, likely only 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐷, before retrieving them. Zeiram instructed him to ensure all others were secure. After ending the call, Zeiram leaned back in his chair, confident of their victory and considering his backup plan. Meanwhile, at a different location, heroes Pinky, Invisible Girl, 𝐼𝐼𝐬, and 𝐼𝐼𝐬 were at a rundown news station. Pinky excitedly declared they should take down the villains, but 𝐼𝐼𝐬 shushed her, reminding her that they were there to observe and attack only if necessary. 𝐼𝐼𝐬 added that her shouting could compromise their position. Apologizing, Pinky acknowledged the tension. 𝐼𝐼𝐬 expressed concern about bringing inexperienced heroes, but they pressed on, determined to move forward. As they sneaked into the facility, Pinky's earlier outburst attracted unwanted attention, revealing a figure cloaked in black and wires. Upon entering, they decided to have Invisible Girl conduct reconnaissance. The other 3 heroes waited at the inner entrance while the last one removed her boots and gloves to explore the area. The only issue with this plan was that she was entirely vulnerable to any potential threats, which was precisely what the man observing wanted. He watched her through thermal goggles integrated into his mask, as she remained oblivious to his presence. He was pressed against the wall, peering through the window. When he sensed the moment was right, he quietly opened the window and climbed up toward the ceiling. Once in position, he activated the saws on his wrists and launched himself at the unsuspecting hero. In a swift motion, chaos erupted as the room was filled with a sense of danger. The hero fell to the floor, and the atmosphere shifted. One of the heroes, 𝐼𝐼𝐬, expressed concern about the delay, suggesting they check on her. The masked figure, revealing himself, assured them that she was already dealt with. 𝐼𝐬 attempted to shoot at him, but the criminal effortlessly deflected the shots with his saws. He then dropped to all fours and propelled himself toward the heroes, aiming to strike 𝐼𝐬 with his weapons. However, 𝐼𝐼𝐬 intervened, freezing the saws in place. Seizing the opportunity, 𝐼𝐬 landed a kick before the villain detached his weapons and evaded an attack from Pinky, who tried to hit him with acid. With a menacing declaration, 𝐼𝐻 announced his intentions, proclaiming that none of them would escape alive. He then slid down the hallway and changed direction, prompting Pinky to chase after him without hesitation. 𝐼𝐬 shouted for her to wait, but it was too late. She was already pursuing the villain. 𝐼𝐬𝐬 noted the danger of their separation, realizing 𝐼𝐻's strategy. Meanwhile, Pinky managed to catch up to 𝐼𝐻, but as she prepared to attack, he leaped out the window. Without thinking, she followed him. Upon exiting, she noticed that all of 𝐼𝐻's wires were aimed at her. Quickly, she created a shield of acid, which protected her from the front, but she failed to see the wires approaching from behind. They struck her, causing her to fall to the ground, the impact echoing ominously. 𝐼𝐻, indifferent to the consequences, kicked her head, taunting her. Just then, a bullet struck his foot, causing him to wince in pain. 𝐼𝐬 seized the moment and struck him in the face with the butt of his gun. In retaliation, 𝐼𝐻 delivered an uppercut and unleashed more wires. 𝐼𝐬𝐬 managed to freeze most of them, while 𝐼𝐬 shot down any that slipped through. It wasn't long before the villain found himself completely restrained. 𝐼𝐬 declared that 𝐼𝐻 was under arrest, asserting that his foul companions would also be brought to justice. 𝐼𝐻, however, remained defiant, thinking about his promises. He warned the heroes that they did not grasp the seriousness of the situation. In a surprising move, all the wires detached from him, and he leaped into the air. The 2 heroes, caught off guard, failed to notice the villain drawing a shuriken. The object lodged itself between 𝐼𝐬's eyes as he fell to the ground, lifeless. 𝐼𝐻 quickly grabbed 𝐼𝐻 by the boot, pulling him down since he wasn't high enough. Then he froze both of 𝐼𝐻's boots and began to strike the villain until he lost consciousness. 𝐼𝐻 informed 𝐒𝐮𝐦𝐻 that all the others were gone, he had secured the villain, and called the authorities. He would now head to the rendezvous point. With that, another hero survived. In Nisa's office, the principal was busy sipping tea after receiving multiple calls about heroes raiding various sites. Tragically, most of them had perished, leaving only one survivor each time, bringing the total for the final raid to 5. Nizu felt a growing sense of worry for the 6th group, as it had been many hours since the last report, and he had yet to hear from them. He could only hope they were safe. About 2 hours earlier, a group of 4 heroes was approaching an abandoned mine. 2 of them entered the mine, 1 stayed outside to guard, while the last one surveyed the area from above. The team consisted of Sugar Man, 𝐼𝐼𝐬, 𝐼𝐼𝐬, and Hawks. 𝐼𝐼𝐬 asked 𝐼𝐼𝐬 if he spotted anything yet, but 𝐼𝐼𝐬 reported that there were no signs of danger. 𝐼𝐼𝐬 urged him to keep searching to ensure the area was clear. While they were focused elsewhere, Sugar Man waited by the entrance, unaware of the impending threat. Suddenly, the ground trembled, and a massive hand emerged, grabbing him. 𝐾𝐞𝐭𝐚𝐢𝐥𝐬 appeared from the earth, declaring that he had been ordered to eliminate anyone he did not recognize. Despite Sugar Man's efforts, the giant's grip was too powerful, and he was overwhelmed. Afterward, 𝐾𝐞𝐭𝐚𝐢𝐥𝐬 retreated underground to confront the others. Hawks, hearing the commotion, flew over and was horrified to see the aftermath. He realized that Sugar Man was gone and quickly relayed the grim news to 𝐼𝐼𝐬, who was devastated by the loss of his friend. However, he quickly regained his focus when he heard the ground shifting behind him. The wall collapsed, revealing 𝐾𝐞𝐭𝐚𝐢𝐥𝐬, and 𝐼𝐼𝐬 sprinted away as fast as he could, the giant in pursuit. 𝐼𝐼𝐬 informed his teammates that he was being chased by the enormous villain. Hawks instructed him to lead 𝐾𝐞𝐭𝐚𝐢𝐥𝐬 into a dead end so they could trap him. 𝐼𝐼𝐬 followed the plan, navigating through the underground maze until he reached a stopping point. He kicked the supports of the room and fled through the only exit, which partially collapsed behind him. As 𝐾𝐞𝐭𝐚𝐢𝐥𝐬 entered the room, the beams snapped, causing the mountain to crash down on him. Outside, the remaining heroes waited before descending to check on the giant. After an hour, 𝐼𝐼𝐬 decided to investigate alone, despite his teammates' warnings to go together. When he finally heard them, he was positioned directly above 𝐾𝐞𝐭𝐚𝐢𝐥𝐬, who swiped upward with his claws. The reach was so great that 𝐼𝐼𝐬 was struck down. 𝐾𝐞𝐭𝐚𝐢𝐥𝐬 then emerged from the rubble, glaring at the last 2 heroes. Hawks devised a plan, instructing 𝐼𝐼𝐬 to assist him. Hawks launched himself at the giant, firing feathers from various angles. Although 𝐾𝐞𝐭𝐚𝐢𝐥𝐬 swatted at the feathers, they began to overwhelm him. Distracted, he failed to notice Hawks approaching with 2 feather blades aimed at his neck. Unfortunately, the weapons did not penetrate the giant's tough exterior, leaving Hawks feeling ineffective. Meanwhile, 𝐼𝐼𝐬 stood still, his consciousness detached from his body, floating unseen toward 𝐾𝐞𝐭𝐚𝐢𝐥𝐬. As he neared, he attempted to take control of the giant. 𝐾𝐞𝐭𝐚𝐢𝐥𝐬 sensed the intrusion but resisted, relying on the quirks within him to fend it off. Realizing time was short, he ignored the feathers and advanced toward 𝐼𝐼𝐬. Despite the efforts of Hawks and 𝐼𝐼𝐬 to intervene, 𝐾𝐿𝐴 lifted his foot and struck 𝐼𝐼𝐬, ending the possession. With only Hawks remaining, 𝐾𝐿𝐴 turned his attention to him. Back in Nisa's office, he continued to wonder about the fate of the last group when he received a call. The voice on the other end identified himself as 𝐛Soḻ 𝐾𝐭𝐚𝐢𝐥𝐬, the Admiral of Japan's military department. He warned Nizu to instruct his heroes to avoid the final destination, as a missile had been dispatched to that location. Nizu inquired about the missile's power, and the Admiral assured him it was enough to illuminate all of Tokyo. He informed Nizu that the area had been evacuated and that this nightmare would soon end. After the call, Nizu quickly activated his comms to alert everyone except the 6th group to retreat immediately. The heroes complied and turned back just as the missile struck, creating a massive explosion visible to all. 𝐾𝐿𝐴 shouted in frustration as he was struck by Hawks, who attempted to reach the blinding light of the explosion. Just then, a dragon-shaped head wrapped around him, and Massacre commanded him to remember that their emissary wanted them to stay away from that location. The villains gathered, with Mikaboshi holding Hawks captive, contemplating their next move. In the midst of the rubble from the destroyed base lay a crater, remnants of the city and the station where Zeiram had been. Among the debris, a faint shaking sound emerged. From beneath the rocks, a clawed hand burst forth. Once the explosion subsided, 𝐒𝐮𝐬 quickly dispatched drones to assess the damage and scan the area for radiation levels. The results alarmed him. The radiation level was absolute zero. This was impossible, given that the weapon had been filled with it, yet there was not a trace in the atmosphere. As the drones continued their search, 𝐒𝐮𝐬 spotted a hand moving among the rubble. The creature crawled out, standing with a slight limp, its fake head disfigured and visor broken, while its actual body hung to one side. What terrified 𝐒𝐮𝐬 was that the bomb had not caused the creature's injury. A large piece of shrapnel was embedded in its body, and it screamed in pain as white, foamy substance oozed from the wound. After a moment, the creature ceased its cries and turned its gaze toward the drones. It transformed its arm into a weapon and swiftly shot them down, severing their feed. 𝐒𝐮𝐬 quickly activated his communication device, alerting the heroes that the villain had survived and that the radiation had dissipated. They needed to act quickly to eliminate the threat. The 5 heroes, 𝗟𝗏, 𝐿𝐼𝐼𝐻, 𝗏𝐼𝐼𝐿, 𝐴𝐻𝐴𝐵𝐿, and Dynamite, rushed to the location. Upon arrival, they found only Ash and Rock, with their foe standing tall amidst the destruction, slightly injured. Zeiram yanked the shrapnel from his head and hurled it at 𝗏𝐼𝐼𝐻. The projectile struck with such speed that the hero had no chance to react, and he fell, incapacitated. With the danger apparent, 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐻𝐽 summoned concrete from the ground to ensnare the villain, leaving only his head exposed. 𝗟𝗏 charged in, delivering a powerful punch to the creature. Zeiram remained still, allowing the heroes to strike him repeatedly. Unbeknownst to them, the wound in his head began to seal, and his leg twisted back into place. After what felt like an eternity, Zeiram effortlessly broke free and caught 𝗟𝗏's next punch, twisting the hero's arm painfully before throwing him into charge bolt. While the 2 heroes were momentarily distracted, Zeiram turned his attention to 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐻 and Dynamite. His head straightened, and his visor reformed, fully healing him. He taunted the heroes, explaining that the more radiation he absorbed, the stronger his healing became. Their attacks had only made him more powerful and hastened the countdown to destruction. 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐻, in a moment of rashness, charged at the villain on a wave of concrete. When he tackled Zeiram, the villain remained unmoved, delivering a devastating blow that shattered 𝐒𝐮𝐬𝐻. Dynamite rushed in, launching an explosion aimed at Zeiram's midsection. However, the attack had no effect, and Zeiram retaliated with a punch. Dynamite managed to block the attack and countered with a massive strike, pushing Zeiram back slightly. Without a sound, Zeiram approached Dynamite, effortlessly lifting him and throwing him aside. The force of the throw created a powerful gust, sending the hero crashing into the ground. Just then, Charge Bolt intervened, delivering a shock that briefly stunned Zeiram. This moment allowed 𝗟𝗏 to land a punch on the villain's face, causing some damage. Unfortunately, the wound healed almost instantly, and Zeiram seized 𝗟𝗏 by the face, reveling in the moment as he began to crush the hero's skull, the sound echoing in the air. Enraged, Charge Bolt charged at Zeiram, vowing to avenge his fallen comrades. In a furious attack, he launched himself at the villain, combining his power with an explosive force. The resulting blast obliterated the surrounding area, creating a massive crater. However, as the smoke cleared, Zeiram remained unfazed, holding Charge Bolt's hand and negating the explosion's impact. With a swift motion, Zeiram retaliated, throwing a punch that Dynamite managed to catch. They found themselves in a stalemate, but Zeiram boasted about his knowledge of the heroes. He lunged at Dynamite, who had anticipated the move. In a moment of cunning, Dynamite released his grip and dodged, pulling a knife from his gauntlet and stabbing it through Zeiram's throat. As Zeiram fell to one knee, he coughed, acknowledging Dynamite's cleverness. Dynamite's expression shifted to horror as he rushed toward what remained of his friend, calling out in despair. The realization of loss weighed heavily on him, and he cried out in anguish, grappling with the devastation surrounding him. Zeiram reflected on his feelings, acknowledging that he didn't care about the consequences. However, he could never bring himself to harm Kaken. He hoped that Koichi would guide the team effectively as he closed his eyes. Farther away, Nizu observed the fight through hacked cameras while sipping his tea. He felt a sense of relief at the demise of the assassin, despite his general aversion to taking lives. However, his enjoyment quickly turned to confusion as he noticed sparks emanating from the wound. Upon closer inspection, he realized that Zeiram's skin had shifted aside upon impact, revealing an exoskeleton beneath. Intrigued, he decided to investigate further. As the heroes began to relax after defeating Zeiram, they failed to notice the tendrils emerging from Zeiram's hat, anchoring themselves to the concrete ground and nearby buildings. Back with Nizu, he spat out his tea in surprise, his expression shifting to fear as he recognized his error. The figure in the suit was merely a decoy. The true Zeiram was hidden within the hat. The scene shifted to an abandoned radio station, where heroes 𝗂𝐷, 𝗏𝐿, 𝐼𝐸𝐽, and 𝐶𝐼𝐺𝐻 were stealthily approaching the facility. They moved quietly, ensuring no one was nearby. 𝗏𝐿 reported that there were approximately 20 individuals scattered around the area and 15 inside. 𝐶𝐼𝐺𝐻 acknowledged the information but expressed concern about the presence of any key members among them. 𝐒𝐮𝐬 suggested that with so many adversaries, a direct approach would be necessary rather than relying on stealth. Just as she finished speaking, 3 grotesque humanoids passed by, one of them sniffing the air. It quickly turned its head toward the heroes and let out a roar loud enough to alert the others. 𝐶𝐼𝐺𝐻 reacted swiftly, raising spikes from the cement beneath the creatures, impaling them. To the heroes' dismay, the creatures remained alive but immobilized. 𝐒𝐮𝐬 transformed into her dragon form and began to overpower the monsters outside, with 𝗏𝐿 assisting her. Meanwhile, 𝐶𝐼𝐺𝐻 and 𝗂𝐷 entered the building to confront the remaining threats. Inside, 𝐶𝐼𝐺𝐻 engaged the monsters on the lower level while 𝗂𝐷 ascended to the top floor, where she spotted 5 creatures scattered throughout the room. Using her long tongue, she knocked 2 of them against the wall, incapacitating them. The remaining 3 charged at her, but she quickly adhered to the wall, evading their grasp. 𝗂𝐷 then wrapped her tongue around them and slammed them down, pinning them to the floor. Believing she had triumphed, she leaped back to the ground level, unaware of the figure behind her, their arm engulfed in blue flames. Meanwhile, 𝐒𝐮𝐬 crushed 2 more of the bizarre flesh monsters outside. It took considerable force to render them immobile, and she had to bury them deep into the ground to ensure they would not pose a threat. 𝗏𝐿 utilized all his limbs to slam the creatures against various debris, bending it to keep them restrained. They continued to overpower the monsters until none were left. Once victorious, 𝗏𝐿 transformed his limbs into eyes and ears to survey the area. He quickly realized there were only 2 individuals on the 2nd floor and switched to panic mode, urging 𝗂𝐷 to evacuate. Unfortunately, it was too late. The entire 2nd floor erupted into flames. Meanwhile, the rest of the 𝗬𝐻 watched from a distance, where Massacre, known as Koichi Himawari, sat with a knot of fear in his stomach. He observed one of the buds wilting, recalling Zeiram's ominous words before the plan unfolded. Koichi remembered the conversation vividly. Zeiram had insisted that if his plan failed, Koichi would take charge, despite his protest that stronger members like 𝗂𝐷 and 9 should lead instead. Zeiram had reassured him of his intelligence and capability, urging him not to despair, as the buds would only perish if significant damage was inflicted on his physical form. If Zeiram fell, Koichi was to make him proud. 𝐺𝐼𝐺𝐻 looked at Massacre, inquiring about their next move. Massacre removed his mask, revealing a confident smirk. He declared that they would fulfill the old MSDR's wishes, assuring everyone that they would not remain inactive for long. With that, they all melted into the shadows. Izuku Midoriya, known as Zeiram, had been regarded as a monster throughout most of his life. Labeled a freak, an experiment, a creature from a fairy tale, he embodied the essence of those tales that never truly end. In a dark pit where a lifeless body lay, a subtle twitch disturbed the stillness of its neck.